Meng Hao hovered in midair. Above him was the massive rift ripped open in the sky, an incredibly shocking sight. The surrounding blood demon sect disciples, whoever they were, looked at Meng Hao with trembling hearts. He now had everyone's complete attention. Even the sect's spirit-severing cultivators felt awe, permanently branded into their hearts. The complete silence filling the blood demon sect was broken by an archaic voice echoing from the centrally located Mount Blood Demon. The voice, hoarse and heavy with the weight of countless ages, filled the entire blood demon sect, heard by every disciple. Meng Hao was originally a scholar, born 300 years ago in the state of Zhao in the southern domain. By chance, he began to walk the path of cultivation. He had a perfect foundation with 10 Dao pillars and slew core formation cultivators. The voice, of course, belonged to Patriarch Blood Demon. As it echoed about, all the cultivators of the Blood Demon sect listened intently. When the state of Zhao was mentioned, Wang Yaokai's expression turned to reminiscence. The state of Zhao was his hometown too. Later, he made his way to the southern domain. In the Song clan's search for a son-in-law, he clinched victory in the competition, but then abandoned his status as a son-in-law of the Song clan to join the Violet Fate sect. In the Violet Fate sect, his skill in pill concocting reached the highest of levels. He was promoted to Violet Furnace Lord and became known as Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. By the time these words rang out, the silence was impossible to maintain. Gasps could be heard, and a massive commotion erupted. Once again, all eyes focused on Meng Hao, hovering there calmly in midair. Meng Hao, I remember now. Meng Hao was Grandmaster Pill Cauldron back in the Violet Fate sect. Heavens! Last year I went to an auction where a pill marked with Grandmaster Pill Cauldron's emblem sold at an astronomical price. It's him, Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. I remember. Meng Hao caused a huge disaster that year and then just disappeared. People stared at him with even more fervor than before. Earlier, they had submitted to Meng Hao's cultivation base, but now his experiences were shaking them, filling them with incredible admiration. Li Shiki gazed silently at Meng Hao, as images of the past events flitted through her mind. In Foundation Establishment, he could vanquish core formation. In core formation, he could slay nascent soul. All of you have heard stories about Meng Hao over the years. He left the southern domain and went to the Black Lands, where he quickly rose to prominence. He entered the western desert, where he single-handedly led his tribe out of the Violet Rain apocalypse. He slaughtered countless enemies, and his name rocked the western desert. Later, he sank to the bottom of the Violet Sea, whose waters have the power to decay all living things. It was on the seafloor that he gained enlightenment of a great Tao and entered the great circle of the nascent soul stage. Patriarch Blood Demon's voice was as ancient as ever. Hearing it gave rise to massive waves of shock among the disciples. They stared in disbelief at Meng Hao. To them, his experiences were the stuff of legend. Even the previously hostile legacy, apprentices of the spirit-severing patriarchs, now stared at Meng Hao with awe and fanaticism. He's done so many things. Compared to him, our lives are soft and easy. Sure, we might kill a few people here and there, but compared to him, our experiences aren't even worth mentioning. Meng Hao said nothing. Hearing Patriarch Blood Demon recount his experiences was almost like listening to the stories of a stranger. Still, he wasn't surprised that Patriarch Blood Demon knew so much about him. When Meng Hao was in the great circle of the nascent soul stage, he battled a first-severing cultivator. In a war that rocked the Black Lands and shocked the western desert, he exterminated the man's entire tribe. The war didn't last long, nor did word of it spread far, before he left for the ancient demon Immortal sect. As for what happened there, I'm not entirely clear. One thing I do know. The events that occurred there because of him were nothing short of incredible. After leaving the ancient demon Immortal sect, Meng Hao encountered the 10th Wang clan patriarch, a peak Dao-seeking expert. Meng Hao slew his clone and was then forced to go to the Milky Way Sea. After multiple encounters, his cultivation base was stolen away, and he became mortal. At this point, gasps rang out. The listening disciples could scarcely believe what they were hearing. What they had heard before already left them with the sensation that Meng Hao's experiences were legend, but the story had just taken an even more shocking twist. He became mortal. He lost his cultivation base. He made an enemy of a Dao-seeking expert, the Blood Prince. He's incredible. He lost his cultivation base, but look at him now. He's obviously incredibly fierce and valiant. What happened in the meantime? The buzz of conversation filled the air. The three Demon Fire patriarchs were gobsmacked, and Patriarch Darkheaven stared at Meng Hao with intense astonishment. As for the hunchbacked old man from the fifth mountain peak, his eyes radiated a strange glow. The pretty young woman next to him and the other legacy apprentices were hearing Meng Hao's story for the first time. All of them panted as they looked up at him floating there calmly. Gradually, they began to realize there was something about him that seemed lonesome. Wang Yaokai stared at Meng Hao in a daze. He knew the rest of the story, though not all the details. Meng Hao continued his silence. He wasn't surprised that Patriarch Blood Demon even knew about his encounters with the 10th Wang clan patriarch in the Milky Way Sea. What happened in the Black Civ sect showed that. Clearly, Patriarch Blood Demon was holding nothing back about Meng Hao. He revealed everything he knew. After becoming mortal, Meng Hao chose to go to the Rebirth Cave. There, his beloved chose to give up everything for him. In the end, he was reborn. He performed his second severing, becoming the #1 figure under Dao Seeking. As for his beloved, she was captured by the Black Civ sect. Meng Hao, acting alone, slaughtered his way into the sect. He killed tens of thousands of Black Civ sect disciples, including several spirit-severing cultivators. In the end, he fought with the Black Civ sect's #1 patriarch, 6 Daos. I intervened in that battle, which is how the Blood Demon sect came to have a new blood prince, Meng Hao. This is his story. Who among you chooses not to submit? As the echoes of Patriarch Blood Demon's archaic voice faded, the heart of every disciple surged with shock. They were completely shaken by hearing of Meng Hao's experiences. The shocking path he had walked and his cultivation base filled them with intense zealotry. In their astonishment, the three Demon Fire patriarchs and Patriarch Darkheaven now understood everything. As for the 7 legacy apprentices of Patriarch Darkheaven on the 2nd mountain peak, the fan-wielding young man on the 4th mountain peak, and the pretty girl on the 5th mountain peak, they gazed at Meng Hao with minds and hearts reeling. They now clearly understood how powerful Meng Hao was, and it filled them with a terror that far exceeded what any other chosen could impart. To them, this wasn't just a matter of Meng Hao being worthy of becoming Blood Prince. Few sects could ever have a sect prince like this. A person like him could actually found his own sect. One by one, everyone began to clasp hands and bow to Meng Hao. Blood Prince, we offer our respects. Meng Hao's cultivation base had crushed anyone who refused to bow in submission. The recounting of his experiences had shocked the hearts of any who inwardly refused to acknowledge him. Patriarch Blood Demon's words ensured that Meng Hao was now truly worthy to be Blood Prince of the Blood Demon sect. Meng Hao said nothing. He waved his right hand, causing the black-white pearls and the 9th mountain to vanish. At the same time, the nascent divinities of the 2 Ironblood patriarchs were released. Meng Hao had not truly wiped them out of existence. Their nascent divinities trembled. From within the black-white pearls they had seen everything that happened and heard Patriarch Blood Demon's words. Now, they didn't even have the tiniest intention of provoking Meng Hao. Quite the opposite, they were filled with deep awe and joined everyone else in bowing to Meng Hao. Meng Hao's gaze swept across the crowds. Then he turned and made his way off into the distance. He did not occupy one of the mountains within the area of the 5 mountain peaks, choosing instead a beautiful, nameless valley on the outside. After Meng Hao occupied it, the Blood Demon sect disciples came to view the valley as a holy land second only to Patriarch Blood Demon's mountain peak. Plenty of disciples were more than happy to stand guard outside, transforming the valley into one of the most important locations in the Blood Demon sect. Because of Meng Hao, Wang Yaokai became even more famous in the Blood Demon sect. In fact, the hunchbacked old man from the 5th mountain peak personally appeared to take him as an apprentice. As a result, Wang Yaokai became a legacy apprentice of the 5th mountain peak, a position far higher than what he had occupied before. As for the valley Meng Hao occupied, the Blood Demon sect disciples secretly began to refer to it as Blood Prince Gorge. The Blood Prince liked peace and quiet, and no one dared enter Blood Prince Gorge unless summoned. Time passed. 9 nine-day cycles later, on the 81st day, Meng Hao sat in his log cabin in the valley. The fragrance of flowers drifted through the air, and green grass carpeted the entire area. It was like a utopia hidden away from the turmoil of the world. A woman lay in front of Meng Hao, her eyes closed. She was beautiful and radiated the aura of an immortal spirit. Her skin was as pure as flawless white jade. Meng Hao looked down at her and waited patiently. Around dusk, the woman's eyelashes trembled as if she were gathering the strength to awaken. A moment later, she slowly opened her eyes. At first, her eyes held a confused look, as if countless memories were streaming into her mind. The blankness lingered before finally giving way to lucidity. It was then that she realized someone was sitting next to her, looking at her with warmth in his eyes. Meng Hao. Su Qing looked at Meng Hao and smiled a warm, beautiful smile. She slowly sat up and reached out to stroke the side of Meng Hao's face. "It feels wonderful to wake up." Meng Hao looked back at her and smiled too, but it was a smile that, deep down, held sadness. He knew that what he was experiencing now could last no more than 99 years. "I won't leave this valley for the next 99 years, Su Qing said. "I'll accompany you until the time for reincarnation comes." 1 year. An entire year had passed since Meng Hao arrived in the Blood Demon sect. During that time, he didn't step half a pace outside his valley, nor did anyone disturb him. In the utopia of his valley, he and Su Qing watched the sun rise and set. Everything was calm and peaceful, and they spent their time enjoying the warmth and sweetness of each other's company. During that year, Su Qing did not practice cultivation. She lived like a mortal woman, accompanying Meng Hao. Occasionally her laughter would drift out from within the valley, and the Blood Demon sect disciples standing guard outside would smile and look back toward it. This was their blood prince, and their blood prince's beloved. During that year, Meng Hao's reputation inside the Blood Demon sect did not lessen. Furthermore, stories of what had occurred in the Black Civ sect began to spread out from the Blood Demon sect into the rest of the southern domain. Soon, Meng Hao's name became even more illustrious. He was a spirit-severing expert, Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, Blood Prince of the Blood Demon sect, and had waged war against the Black Civ sect. The story spread, and soon the name Meng Hao was on the minds of everyone in the southern domain. As for Meng Hao, he learned of the tragic fate of the Wang clan, and heard about the broken-souled lunatic who raved of immortal ascension and wandered around, having lost everything. During that year, Meng Hao did not give up on cultivating the Blood Demon Grand Magic. However, on repeated occasions he sensed he was incapable of reaching the third level. He was missing something. He had reached a bottleneck, that much was obvious. Patriarch Blood Demon offered him no tips or reminders. In fact, he didn't speak to Meng Hao at all during the entire year. It seemed he had delivered the entire Blood Demon sect into Meng Hao's hands. Meng Hao now had authority over the life and death of everyone in the sect. Although he experienced no breakthrough in the Blood Demon Grand Magic, he did gain enlightenment regarding the cultivation of the 9 Heavens treasured body seal. The art was crude and simple, but it could temper the fleshly body to an incredible degree. Unfortunately, it required a vast number of magical items to fuse into the flesh. Essentially, it was a divine ability that could refine one's body into a treasured magical item. Most people, even if they gained enlightenment, would find it difficult to cultivate. It required incredible amounts of magical items. Just to cultivate the first level required 10,000 spirit-severing level magical items. Thankfully, the requirement wasn't spirit-severing life essence treasures. Were that the case, Meng Hao would have given up immediately. He simply could not cultivate something like that. However, if he could successfully cultivate the first level, his fleshly body would exceed spirit-severing and reach the Tao-seeking stage. When the fleshly body reached Tao-seeking, the qi and blood contained a natural law of heaven and earth. Such a body was a precious treasure. If the second level was cultivated successfully, the fleshly body could break through Tao-seeking and experience fleshly body immortal tribulation. If transcended, the qi and blood could reach immortal ascension. There are a total of 4 levels to this art. If I can cultivate the highest level. His eyes gleamed with a brilliant light for a moment, then quickly faded. The items required to cultivate the 4th level were things the like of which he had never even heard of. And then there's the withering flame demon magic true self Tao, he thought, his eyes shining with a strange light. During the year, his greatest achievement was not the 9 Heavens treasured body seal, but the withering flame demon magic true self Tao. After much pondering, Meng Hao had finally gained a bit of understanding. It was actually an art that could be used to create a clone. Clone magic was not common in the southern domain, but neither was it rare, and most spirit-severing cultivators had found a way to create clones. After all, if a clone died, the true self could continue living. Likewise, if the true self died, the clone could continue living. Creating an additional clone was like creating an additional life. There were many magics for cultivating clones, each with its own unique aspects. The Withering Flame Demon Magic True Self Tao was one of the highest-ranked Taoist magics in the ancient demon immortal sect, the life essence Taoist magic of the Withering Flame Demon, one of the three archdemons ranked directly beneath Lord Li. In terms of power, it would be hard to find something more illustrious in all the Ninth Mountain and Sea. Other clone magics require extracting a strand from one's own soul, then inserting it into a flesh and blood body, or perhaps a spirit body. Another option is to use some sort of magical item to create a body, then link it to the true self. Those are the safest methods, and avoid the problems that can arise from the clone revolting. However, the Withering Flame Demon Magic True Self Tao can create a homologous clone body. The clone body also requires a strand of soul, except not from one's own soul, but the soul of an outsider. The stronger the soul, the stronger the clone. More than one soul can be fused into it, making the clone even more powerful. It's not a matter of controlling the body with the soul, but controlling the soul with the body. The soul withers, transforming into a flame that nourishes the clone. This is not a Taoist art, but demon magic. Once the clone is created, the physical bodies will transform it into a true self, suppressing the clone's soul and becoming the true self Tao. The body is like a sheath, and the soul is like a blade. The key to it all is controlling that razor-sharp blade. This art is incredibly overbearing. Withering Flame Demon Magic True Self Tao. What this magic cultivates is not actually a clone, but a second true self, an incredibly powerful true self. Many things happened in the outside world during the year that passed. The most shocking event was not the reappearance of Meng Hao, but the fact that one of the three danger zones of the southern domain, the ancient Tao Lakes, had begun erupting. Furthermore, the eruptions were growing more frequent. At first they were limited to Tao geysers on the periphery of the Tao Lakes, but eventually even the Tao Lakes themselves began to erupt. 1. You may remember the events which transpired around one particular Tao geyser, which began in chapter 266. Meng Hao/Fang Mu was disguised as the faceless Azure hero. He eventually gained enlightenment and defeated Black Land's Tao child Luo Chang. The ancient Tao Lakes are erupting again. I heard that last month, one of the smaller Tao Lakes erupted, and a spirit-severing magical item appeared. You don't even need to mention the Tao Lakes. The Tao geysers are also erupting. Cultivators are gathering, and I heard that many people are gaining enlightenment. Such cries could be heard frequently in the Blood Demon sect in recent days. More than a few disciples left the sect and traveled to the Tao Lakes to seek good luck and fortune. As time passed, more and more disciples became interested in the Tao Lakes. At first, it was only core formation up to mid-nascent soul cultivators who cared most. However, a month later, a great circle nascent soul cultivator from the solitary sword sect received enlightenment and entered the spirit-severing stage. This shook the entire southern domain and caused virtually all the great circle nascent soul cultivators stuck beneath the spirit-severing stage to rush to the ancient Tao Lakes to seek good fortune. Soon, witnesses spread reports of an eruption within the ancient Tao Lakes that gave rise to incredible ripples. Ripples that could allow spirit-severing cultivators to experience enlightenment regarding a great Tao. The news swept across the southern domain like a storm. Spirit-severing patriarchs from every sect and clan went wild with eagerness. The Blood Demon sect was no exception. After obtaining permission from Meng Hao, the two Ironblood patriarchs, Patriarch Darkheaven, and the three Demonfire patriarchs entered the valley and approached Meng Hao, who sat cross-legged outside his log cabin, a flagon of alcohol in front of him. Blood Prince, the Tao Lakes are erupting. The patriarch is in secluded meditation and hasn't inquired about sect affairs. Will the Blood Demon sect be allowed to participate in this opportunity for good fortune? It's true, Blood Prince. The other sects and clans are beginning to stir. A few days ago, the Solitary Sword sect sent a large group of cultivators to the ancient Tao Lakes, led by a spirit-severing patriarch. The Tao geysers in the border region of the ancient Tao Lakes don't erupt according to any pattern. However, the small lakes in the inner region erupt once every 2,000 years. As for the prime lake, it erupts once every 10,000 years. According to the calculations, now is the time when virtually all the ancient Tao Lakes will be erupting. Su Qing stood quietly off to the side. The spirit-severing patriarchs treated her very courteously. After all, the fact that Meng Hao had single-handedly fought the entire Black Civ sect for her showed the place she held in his heart. Meng Hao opened his eyes, revealing a profound light, as well as a ruthlessness so intense it could not be dispelled. The instant his eyes opened, The 6 spirit-severing patriarchs' hearts shuddered, and they respectfully bowed their heads. "The ancient Tao lakes," murmured Meng Hao. His cultivation base was now stuck at a bottleneck. Although he had some ideas, he was still unclear regarding his third severing. Further secluded meditation would not help him progress with the blood demon grand magic either. He turned his head to look at Su Qing. "I'll be fine," she said with a smile. "I'll be waiting here for you. Wouldn't the best thing be for you to acquire some good fortune?" Her gaze was warm as she looked at him. During the past year, she had been very happy. She didn't worry about cultivation or the complications of life. She was with Meng Hao, and it almost felt like the simple life back in the Reliance sect. The spirit-severing patriarchs all looked expectantly at Meng Hao, waiting for his answer. It was at this point that Yao Ming, the second severing expert of the 3 demon fire patriarchs, suddenly noticed something. He looked down at his bag of holding and produced a glowing jade slip, examining it deeply, his expression flickering. "Blood Prince, we can't hesitate for too long. Now that the Solitary Sword sect has taken action, the Golden Frost sect, Violet Fate sect, Black Civ sect, Song clan and Li clan have followed suit. All have sent forces led by spirit-severing experts to the ancient Tao lakes." With that, he handed the jade slip to Meng Hao. When Meng Hao heard the words Black Civ sect, he saw Su Qing's expression darken. Killing intent flickered in his eyes as he accepted the jade slip. After examining it, he looked up, his eyes shining with determination. "Let's go," he said, rising to his feet and striding forward. The 6 blood demon sect spirit-severing patriarchs' expressions brightened. With Meng Hao as their leader, the blood demon sect would definitely reap an abundant harvest. Meng Hao walked out of the valley followed by the 6. Tens of thousands of disciples were already gathered outside, anticipation on their faces. Meng Hao glanced over them. "Each mountain peak shall select 10,000 disciples to come with me to the ancient Tao lakes." "Yes, Blood Prince." "Yes, Blood Prince." The excited cries instantly rang out through the blood demon sect. Under the direction of the 6 spirit-severing patriarchs, arrangements were made, and soon a crowd of tens of thousands of beams of light shot up into the air to follow Meng Hao. Li Shiki was among them, but as for Wang Yaokai, he remained behind to stand guard cross-legged outside Meng Hao's valley. In the same moment, Meng Hao led the disciples away. Patriarch Blood Demon sat in the blood pond in Mount Blood Demon. Slowly, he opened his eyes. To sever the devil, one must first accept bedevilment. His devilishness is not profound enough yet. This chapter was sponsored by John Andre Klemstel. Chapter 712, Gathering at the Tao Lakes. The 3 danger zones of the Southern Domain. The Rebirth Cave, the Ancient Tao Lakes, and the Ancient Temple of Doom. The most mysterious was the Rebirth Cave. The most ferocious was the Ancient Temple of Doom, but to cultivators, the site offering the most benefit for cultivation was the Ancient Tao Lakes. Still, it was considered a danger zone. After entering, it was hard to predict whether you'd come out alive. Only when the Tao Lakes region was erupting would the danger lessen slightly, and the opportunities for good fortune increase. Within the Tao Lakes region, invisible rifts often appeared that could cut through anything, except perhaps certain precious treasures. There were also many restrictive spells that had existed for countless years. Stumble into one, and you had a 90% chance of ending up dead. There were also many teleportation traps. They appeared without warning, randomly teleporting you to certain areas in the Tao Lakes region. If you got lucky, you might walk away unharmed. If unlucky, you might get teleported into a rift or even into one of the Tao Lakes. Even Tao-seeking experts would be killed or wounded in such a situation. No one could escape unscathed. There was an even more terrifying possibility. Entering a cycle of teleportation, bounced in and out of various locations without ever being let go. It was an endless cycle, and cultivators caught in one would be tormented by continuous teleportation until they died in body and spirit. Such a tragic outcome was not unheard of in the ancient Tao Lakes. Sometimes it was even possible to see corpses passing in and out of various teleportation traps. Few people knew exactly how the ancient Tao Lakes had formed. At the very center of the region was the largest Tao Lake, surrounded by numerous smaller lakes. These lakes had mirror-like surfaces that seemed to reflect the entirety of the heavens. Further out were the Tao geysers. Normally dry and empty, when they erupted it was possible to see Tao projections. In addition to the Tao projections that appeared in the Tao geysers and lakes, they would sometimes spit out precious treasures, ancient records, or bizarre and terrifying beasts. Occasionally precious materials would appear, or jade slips with special techniques. Some were worthless, others priceless. In summary, just about any type of item could erupt out. Over time, some came to suspect that beneath the ancient Dao lakes lay the ruins of some ancient structure or city that had fallen ages ago. Many wished to make their way into those ruins, but even peak Dao-seeking cultivators were incapable of doing so. Even the cultivators of the Jai clan of South Heaven couldn't manage it, much to their chagrin. Currently, hundreds of thousands of cultivators were gathered outside the ancient Dao lakes. Most were rogue cultivators who didn't dare enter the inner region. They could do nothing more than squabble with each other over control of the Dao geysers. Those with enough strength could occupy a Dao geyser, establishing a foundation for their future. But there were fewer than 3,000 Dao geysers, leading to bitter fighting on virtually a daily basis. Even amid all the violence, one cultivator after another gained enlightenment and rose to prominence in the area, which only led to further excitement among the crowds, who would go mad at the chance to acquire good fortune. As time passed, more cultivators arrived. Some attempted to venture into the inner region, where there weren't just Dao geysers but 30-meter Dao lakes. As far as the Dao geysers were concerned, 99% of the time they spat out Dao projections. Only occasionally would they erupt with other items. Dao lakes were different, and the odds tended to depend on the size of the lake. The 30-meter Dao lakes had a 10% chance of spitting out items other than Dao projections. The 300-meter Dao lakes further in had a 30% chance. And there were the 3,000-meter Dao lakes with a 60% chance. Finally, there was the 30,000-meter Dao lake, with a 90% chance of erupting with precious treasures. As for the Dao geysers, once one erupted, a Dao projection would appear, and that geyser would be locked to that one projection in every subsequent eruption. The Dao lakes were different. Even if a Dao projection appeared, it would eventually vanish, and you could wait at the edge of the lake for another eruption. Within the region of the ancient Dao lakes, there were roughly 1,030-meter lakes, each occupied by a small-scale sect, making it hard for outsiders to get near. There were a few hundred 300-meter lakes, most occupied by mid-scale sects or clans. As for the 3,000-meter Dao lakes, there were 10 in total, which great sects or clans like the Solitary Sword sect were qualified to occupy. By this point, the number of southern domain cultivators gathered was not over 1 million, but more in the range of 700,000 to 800,000. As more arrived, there was more fighting and killing. Boom! A group of cultivators suddenly appeared in the sky. Each one shone with a golden light. They wore golden suits of armor and looked completely wild and rough. As they shot through the air, the sky and land dimmed, and ripples spread out in all directions. They didn't look down but fixed their gazes on the inner region of the ancient Dao lakes. When they entered, they proceeded carefully under the leadership of sect experts rather than flying. The Golden Frost sect has arrived. Those are cultivators from the Golden Frost sect. The one in front is Golden Frost sect Patriarch Ling Dong. Don't tell me that's Grandmaster Eternal Mountain behind him. 1. Grandmaster Eternal Mountain is a former apprentice of Grandmaster Pill Demon. In Chapter 236, he came to the Violet Fate sect on the pretense of paying respects to his master, but in fact was trying to determine the identity of Grandmaster Pill Cauldron, which he did, as explained in Chapter 241. It was disciples from his World Pill Division who engaged in the alchemy debate with Meng Hao that started in Chapter 246. See that fat guy off to the side? That's the guy who swore to take 100 beloved, the shameless Li Fugui, right? Cries of alarm rang out from the interior region as the small-scale and even mid-scale sects grew anxious, especially the female disciples, whose faces flushed with trepidation at the mention of Li Fugui. Soon more voices rose from the region outside. The Li clan is here. That's the 19th Li clan patriarch. They say he's a second severing expert. Look at the people behind him. They seem to have equal status. Don't tell me they're also spirit-severing patriarchs. The Song clan's here too. I can see the Song clan's inkstone puppets. The Black Civ sect. The Black Civ sect people are here. Just about every sect and clan in the southern domain has arrived. Voices echoed in all directions throughout the ancient Dao lakes. Leading the Black Civ sect was none other than the third severing patriarch who had survived Meng Hao's attack. His cultivation base had clearly recovered quite a bit, but his face was grim as he glanced around and led his people into the Dao lakes. Within the group from the Song clan was Xianxia. Her expression was placid, and she was followed closely by a middle-aged man who somehow looked threatening despite the lack of any anger on his face. Also present was eccentric Song, whose cultivation base was slightly higher than before, now in the great circle of the nascent soul stage, just half a step from spirit severing. 2. Songjia was the fiancée who Meng Hao won, but then abandoned. She last appeared in the ancient demon immortal sect in chapter 594. Eccentric Song was introduced in chapter 48 and was the one involved in the incident with the iron spear. Meng Hao ended up stealing most of the treasures from his treasure mountain. He was present later in the Song clan's search for a son-in-law, in which he bet that Meng Hao would win the competition in chapter 194. Behind them were over 10,000 junior members of the Song clan, as well as more than 10,000 puppets, black, emanating an intense coldness and completely shocking in appearance. Almost in the same instant the Song clan entered the inner region, a violet-colored auspicious cloud appeared in the sky off in the distance. As it neared, a sallow-faced old man became visible within, surrounded by several other old men bearing similar auras. Their faces were grim and they didn't speak. Behind them, within the cloud, were tens of thousands of disciples and an enormous pill furnace, around which circulated a sword. Their energy was bright and colorful, and as they neared, the cultivators outside the Tao Lakes immediately realized who they were. The Violet Fate Sect. That's Reverend Withered Tao of the Violet Fate Sect. He's a spirit-severing expert. Look behind him, it's the two beauties of the Violet Fate Sect, Chu Yuyan and Hang Sushan. Within the crowd of Violet Fate Sect disciples, Chu Yuyan's gaze swept over the scene below, her delicate brow furrowed, as if searching for someone who wasn't there. Next to her was a charming young woman with skin like snow, incredibly attractive, none other than the holy daughter of Holy Snow City in the Black Lands, Hang Sushan. She too seemed to search through the crowds, her expression growing somewhat gloomy. Next to her was a taciturn, handsome middle-aged man. Occasionally he would look over at Hang Sushan with a tender look in his eye that he kept well hidden. 3. Chu Yuyan and Hang Sushan last appeared together in chapter 388. He was none other than Yi Feimu, who vied with Meng Hao that year for the title of Violet Furnace Lord. A chosen of the Tao of Alchemy, and after the hundreds of years that had passed, he was now in the late nascent soul stage. 4. The last time Yi Feimu actually appeared in the story was in chapter 309, when Meng Hao saved his life and the lives of Chu Yuyan and other Violet Fate Sect cultivators, and then chapter 314, when he vowed to supersede Meng Hao in the Tao of Alchemy. There was another person in the group, somewhat nondescript, with an early nascent soul cultivation base. He too looked below as if searching for a figure that existed somewhere in his memories. He didn't come, the old man sighed. Oh well, I bet he wouldn't even remember who I am. Countless memories of past times in the Violet Fate Sect flickered through the old man's mind. Elder brother Fang Mu, do you still remember Bai Yunlai? 5. Bai Yunlai was Meng Hao/Fang Mu's assistant partner in the Violet Fate Sect. Surprisingly, among the forces of the Violet Fate Sect could also be seen in Sohe and Lin Heilong, the two Violet Furnace Lords. Their gazes swept about, complex expressions on their faces. 6. And Sohe and Lin Heilong were recurring characters who appeared multiple times throughout the alchemy arc. Both were on good terms with Fang Mu/Meng Hao. The auspicious cloud carried the group from the Violet Fate Sect into the region of the ancient Tao Lakes and vanished. Finally, the region outside the lakes returned to its previous state. 3 days later, far off on the horizon, a blood-colored light shone out. The bloody glow spread out in all directions as something resembling a blood-colored demonic beast appeared, shooting forward at incredible speed, a gigantic face visible within it. The vicious, blood-red face sported a spiraling horn, emanating an astonishing energy. If you looked closely, the face was actually made up of tens of thousands of cultivators. At its tip, atop the horn, stood a young man in a blood-colored robe, long hair whipping about his dispassionate face. Within his eyes could be seen a streak of ruthlessness. He was handsome but nothing scholarly about him, cruel and cold instead. This was Meng Hao, who after experiencing death, had the ruthlessness of a devil. Behind him were 6 spirit-severing patriarchs of the Blood Demon Sect, as well as 40,000 disciples. The Blood Demon Sect. That young man, could he be Meng Hao? He used to be called Fang Mu Grandmaster Pill Cauldron. Now, he's the Blood Prince of the Blood Demon Sect. To save his beloved Su Qing, he single-handedly battled the entire Black Civ sect. It's Meng Hao. Instantly, the region outside the Tao Lakes was thrown into a huge commotion. By now, more than a year had passed since the incident at the Black Civ sect, and the news had long since spread through the masses. Among the crowds, More than a few female cultivators gazed at Meng Hao with shining eyes and thought, "I want a beloved just like Meng Hao." As the buzz of conversation rose from the cultivators, Meng Hao and the group from the Blood Demon sect entered the region of the ancient Dao Lakes. In that moment, the entire region began to tremble. One Dao geyser after another, along with a succession of Dao lakes, began to erupt. Innumerable Dao projections appeared, and a riot of colors flashed across heaven and earth. The Blood Demon sect had arrived just in time for a Dao lake eruption. Chapter 713, Dao Lake Eruption. The rumbling of the sky echoed in all directions, and the land quaked violently, as if a giant buried underground were roaring, the power of its voice exploding through the Dao geysers and lakes. From a distance, it almost looked like volcanoes erupting, except what exploded out wasn't lava, but numerous colorful Dao projections, images of cultivators in ancient attire. Some were engaged in magical combat, others practicing cultivation or gaining enlightenment regarding heaven and earth. A variety of cultivation bases could be seen, the lowest being foundation establishment and the highest nascent soul. Looking at the scene as a whole, there were quite a few Dao projections. It was in this moment of eruption that Meng Hao and the force from the Blood Demon sect entered the region of the Dao Lakes. At the same time, cries of shock spread out. "That's a spirit-severing Dao projection. It's actually a spirit-severing Dao proj. Wait, no. That's a Dao projection of a great circle nascent soul cultivator in the moment of his first severing." Great numbers of cultivators swarmed at top speed toward the spirit-severing Dao projection. Meng Hao stopped for a moment and looked back. Off in the distance, he saw a Dao geyser erupting with shocking blue light. Inside the light was a Dao projection of a tall, slender cultivator performing spirit severing. Hundreds of thousands of cultivators in the area were spurred into action. Many among the tens of thousands with Meng Hao were also visibly moved. Meng Hao did nothing to stop them. "Why don't you try to gain enlightenment here?" he said. Immediately, 20,000 cultivators clasped hands and bowed to him, then flew off. Not all were of the nascent soul stage. Other items in the area interested other stages as well. Rumbling and intense ripples echoed from the area ahead of Meng Hao. Numerous 30-meter Dao lakes and countless Dao geysers erupted with intense booms. "Dao treasure, it's a Dao treasure. Look at that sword. It's fragmented, but the sword aura is still incredibly sharp." A black sword flew up out of one of the 30-meter Dao lakes at incredible speed, its sword chi monstrous. Further off, other Dao treasures erupted up into the air. All the 30-meter Dao lakes were being defended by various small sects. When the eruption began, everyone grew incredibly excited and began to fight. In the blink of an eye, the entire area dissolved into chaos. The remaining 20,000 disciples of the Blood Demon sect wore expressions of hope as they looked at Meng Hao. "Do as you wish among these Dao lakes," he said. "If you run into danger, remember to call for help from fellow sect members." At his words, most of the roughly 20,000 cultivators sped off, some rushing to the inner regions, others toward the various 30-meter Dao lakes to join the fighting. Still following Meng Hao were the 6 spirit-severing patriarchs and several thousand disciples, people who couldn't care less about the 30-meter Dao lakes. They joined Meng Hao as he sped onward, all transforming into streaks of colorful light shooting forward. Although they appeared to move quickly, Meng Hao had plenty of time to send his divine sense ahead. What he saw was cultivators flying back and forth, some letting out blood-curdling screams as their bodies were slashed by rifts. The lucky ones lost arms or legs, the unlucky ones were completely ripped apart. Everything was chaos, and without exception, deadly battles were taking place next to the Dao lakes and geysers. Rumble. Ahead, the air started to rumble. 7 or 8 cultivators neared the area and suddenly seemed to be swallowed into nothing, vanishing, leaving only the echoes of miserable shrieks. Rivers of blood flowed below, especially where Dao treasures appeared. Massacres were being carried out in all directions. "Kill them," such cries echoed out constantly. Meng Hao ignored all of it and pressed forward. After advancing about 3,000 meters, he suddenly stopped and raised his right hand to signal those behind him to do the same. As they ground to a halt, they saw a 30-meter Dao lake ahead, above which floated a Dao treasure shaped like a bottle gourd. Several hundred cultivators fought fiercely near it. Then the ground in the area began to glitter with light. Magical symbols appeared, flickered for a moment, and unleashed a shocking power of teleportation. At the same time, a dozen or so corpses appeared out of thin air. There was no time for anyone to react. The moment the corpses appeared, the power of teleportation rumbled out. The several hundred cultivators fighting next to the Tao Lake and the newly appeared corpses all vanished in the blink of an eye. Even Meng Hao's eyes went wide. The 6 spirit-severing patriarchs behind him wore serious expressions, and the other disciples gasped. Was that a teleportation trap? That sort of thing happens all the time in the ancient Tao lakes. The fearsome teleportation traps can appear randomly, without warning. When the teleportation trap appeared just now, I could swear I saw more than 10 desiccated corpses inside. After the teleportation trap disappeared along with the cultivators it had snagged, the bottle gourd floating above the Tao lake glittered as resplendently as ever, attracting even more attention. More cultivators surged toward it, but Meng Hao was already on the move. In the blink of an eye, he was above the 30-meter Tao lake, flicking his right sleeve to collect the bottle gourd. His actions immediately caused the rushing cultivators to stop and turn to fly toward other areas. "Let's go," he said. He and his followers transformed into beams of light that shot onward. As they proceeded, they saw more than 10 teleportation traps and more than 100 instances of rifts appearing. Once, a single rift slashed through over 100 people at once. At one point, Meng Hao noticed living people trapped inside the teleportation traps and grew even more cautious. Those inside madly tried to break free, but materializing only for a split second, they were powerless to escape, helpless but to be continuously teleported around. For the lucky ones, the power of the teleportation traps might dissipate after 3 or 4 activations. The unlucky ones ended up stuck in the cycle until they died. As they went deeper into the Tao Lakes region, there were fewer people but far more intense fighting. Soon, 300-meter Tao Lakes appeared, all forcibly occupied by mid-scale sects and clans. For the most part, great circle nascent soul cultivators stood guard. Such cultivators were locked in combat as Meng Hao and the Blood Demon sect forces approached. They were instantly shaken, and thousands of Blood Demon sect disciples' eyes began to shine with a strange light. After asking Meng Hao's permission, they shot forward to join the fray. The sounds of intense fighting shook everything, and as Meng Hao looked over the chaotic scene, the ruthlessness in his eyes grew stronger. He continued on, refraining from joining the fighting. The Tao projections and treasures here didn't interest him. They proceeded onward, and soon only 300-meter Tao lakes were visible. Suddenly, Meng Hao turned his head toward one such lake not far off, above which was a Tao projection of a cross-legged figure in meditation. It appeared to be a nascent soul cultivator gaining enlightenment regarding heaven and earth, a common sight both outside and in this area. Surrounding the Tao projection were 7 or 8 early nascent soul stage cultivators, fighting over the chance to gain enlightenment. Anytime one got close, the others joined forces to stop them from seizing the opportunity. The methods were ruthless, the attacks deadly, and the surrounding area was littered with corpses. Meng Hao looked the scene over, his eyes glittering slightly. He moved toward the Tao projection, causing the 6 spirit-severing patriarchs and the other Blood Demon sect disciples to stare in shock. Seeing Meng Hao nearing at high speed, the faces of the 7 or 8 early nascent soul stage cultivators fell. The Blood Demon sect. Don't tell me that's the Blood Prince of the Blood Demon sect. Their hearts seemed to tremble in fear, and they were just about to approach as if to cover something up, when Meng Hao stretched out his hand, made a grasping motion and jerked it up. RIPPP. It was like the surface of a painting had been peeled away. Ripples spread out, revealing another world. There was still a Tao lake, but instead of a Tao projection, floating above it was a 30-meter tall mountain peak and 3 old cultivators fighting each other. The air around the mountain twisted and distorted, sending out pulsating ripples. The mountain seemed to hold some magnetic force, gradually sucking the 3 old men's magical items toward it. As soon as Meng Hao appeared, the faces of the 3 old men flickered. "Who's there?" said one. All 3 turned toward Meng Hao and, seeing his clothing as well as the 6 experts behind him, gasped. Earlier, they had used a deception spell to keep outsiders from seeing what was really happening, so the 3 of them could focus on their fight. They had never imagined someone like Meng Hao would appear. Thought Meng Hao, looking over the mountain peak with glittering eyes. The mountain clearly wasn't an ordinary item. He could even sense a bit of spirit-severing aura on it. "Spirit-severing level magical item," he murmured. He stretched his arm toward the mountain and made a grasping motion. The 3 old cultivators were simply too slow to react, incapable of blocking him. The mountain peak rumbled, transformed into a huge hand, and flew down into Meng Hao's palm. After putting it away, he flickered forward and proceeded onward. The forces of the blood demon sect followed. As for the three old men, they stamped their feet but weren't truly angry. After all, items in the ancient Tao lakes had no owner. They belonged to whoever had the power to take them. Damn it, what a waste of time. Fine, let's stick with the old plan and go rob some things from somebody else. Hurry up, if we wait any longer this eruption is going to end. Just as the three old men were about to head to another Tao lake, an unprecedentedly loud rumbling sounded from deeper within the region. At the same time, a 3,000-meter pillar of light shot into the air off in the distance. Shockingly, a black hammer could be seen floating inside it, surrounded by crackling lightning. The incredible sound caught the attention of quite a few onlookers. 3,000. Is that a 3,000-meter Tao lake erupting? A 3,000-meter Tao lake. They don't erupt often, usually it's only the 300-meter Tao lakes. But look, it's erupting now. This is the first time a 3,000-meter Tao lake has erupted during this flare-up of the ancient Tao lakes. It's too bad only the great sects and clans can survive over there. We can't win against them. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he looked toward the 3,000-meter beam of light. The 6 spirit-severing patriarchs behind him also had looks of fervor in their eyes. Along with the few thousand disciples who remained, they sped forward at top speed. This chapter was sponsored by Joshua Acker, Peter Manilov, Theodoros Esferis, and Colin Ding. Chapter 714, Teleportation Cycle. From their current position, the 3,000-meter Tao lake didn't seem far from Meng Hao and his group. But given the dangers lurking in the ancient Tao lakes, it was not a distance they could cross rapidly. Furthermore, the other sects and clans had arrived earlier than the Blood Demon sect, and had already reached the innermost ring of the ancient Tao lakes, where the 10 3,000-meter Tao lakes had already been divided up, as had the 300-meter Tao lakes in that area. One might expect intense fighting there, but that wasn't really the case. Once a great sect or clan occupied a Tao lake, others wouldn't take the initiative to fight them over it. Unless, of course, the item the lake spat out was incredibly valuable. Otherwise, all parties abided by custom. A Tao lake belonged to whoever occupied it. In reality, the battles over treasured items were really battles for the Tao lakes themselves. What the sects and clans really came to fight over was something in the centralmost recesses of the ancient Tao lakes, the 30,000-meter Tao lake. The eruption of the Tao lakes was shocking in the extreme. As Meng Hao and the others sped onward, the air ahead of them began to distort. Meng Hao's eyes flashed, and he waved his right hand behind him. The group dodged aside as a huge rift slashed through the air. It was in such fashion that they slowly made their way forward. More and more rifts appeared, and many of the Blood Demon sect disciples eventually gave up going on, staying behind instead to search for their own good fortune. Eventually, only the 6 spirit-severing patriarchs and fewer than 100 of the most powerful Blood Demon sect disciples kept up with Meng Hao as he pressed further into the inner ring of the ancient Tao lakes. Soon, fewer than 3,000 meters separated them from the Tao lakes. By this point, the other sects and clans had caught sight of their group. There were many familiar faces there, but as soon as their gazes fell on Meng Hao, countless magical teleportation symbols appeared all around him. The moment the symbols appeared, the faces of Meng Hao and the other Blood Demon sect disciples flickered. Meng Hao was at the edge of the teleportation trap, but still fully inside its borders. Only a few of the other Blood Demon sect disciples were trapped inside with him, including Patriarch Darkheaven, the 2 Ironblood patriarchs, and the most senior of the 3 Demonfire patriarchs. Off in the distance, quite a few members of the Violet Fate sect shot to their feet. The faces of Fatty of the Golden Frost sect and Chen Fan of the Solitary Sword sect fell as the power of teleportation rose around Meng Hao. The teleportation happened too quickly. In the blink of an eye, Meng Hao and the other patriarchs began to vanish. Before disappearing, Meng Hao had only enough time to bark out, "Go to the central zone and wait for me there." When he vanished, wild joy appeared on the face of the Black Civ sect 3rd severing patriarch, occupying one of the 3,000-meter Tao lakes. "Die. I hope that Jinx dies in there." For the most part, the members of the Solitary Sword sect, the Golden Frost sect, and the Li clan were all gloating over Meng Hao's misfortune. Only Chen Fan, Fatty, and many of the Violet Fate sect cultivators looked worried, especially Chu Yuyan, whose face went deathly pale. The members of the Song clan were silent and pensive, A complex expression crossed Songjia's face. The middle-aged man next to her watched Meng Hao vanish, then closed his eyes mutely. When the teleportation trap vanished, it took only a few moments for the remaining two Demon Fire patriarchs to conceal their anxiety and lead the rest of the disciples to the central zone of the ancient Dao Lakes. Without Meng Hao to protect them, the journey was even more fraught with danger, and they lost several dozen disciples in the process. By this point, only about 30 survivors remained. Even hurrying along, the two Demon Fire patriarchs noticed that all 10 3,000-meter Dao Lakes were occupied. Many among those forces glared at them as they passed, which caused the Demon Fire patriarchs to frown. Furthermore, the surrounding sects and clans suddenly erupted with spirit-severing auras, multiple near each and every lake. The sect with the fewest spirit-severing cultivators was the Black Civ sect, though their patriarch was in the third severing. Blood Demon sect, you came late. There's no place for you here now. Your luck is bad, you only have 2 spirit-severing experts. Do you really think we're going to share with you? Why don't you just scram? There aren't any extra Dao lakes here, but considering your strength, you could always go occupy some of the 300-meter lakes. There are more than enough to spare. Your fellow Blood Demon sect disciples who fell into the teleportation trap just got unlucky. About half of the spirit-severing cultivators who fall into them never make it out alive. Of the 10 3,000-meter lakes, the Solitary Sword sect had occupied 3, the Golden Frost sect 2, the Black Civ sect 1, and the Violet Fate sect 2. The Li and Song clans each had 1. Surrounding each of the 3,000-meter lakes were 10 300-meter lakes, also occupied by the sects and clans. The two Demon Fire patriarchs' eyes filled with anger. The ridicule from the other sects caused their pupils to glow with the color of blood. They exchanged a frustrated glance. If Meng Hao were here, they wouldn't be afraid at all. But he wasn't. If the other 4 spirit-severing patriarchs were there, they'd be a force that could contend with anyone. But they weren't. Unfortunately, they simply weren't capable of contending for any of the 3,000-meter Dao lakes. "Why don't you hurry up and beat it?" said an old man from the Solitary Sword sect, wearing a gray Taoist robe, sitting cross-legged with a wooden sword resting on his legs. His words echoed out like thunder. The sound rumbled in all directions, causing the two Demon Fire patriarchs' faces to flicker. Sir Giant, Giant is a surname but also same character as Sword. There had always been serious grievances between the Blood Demon sect and the Solitary Sword sect, and it seemed they were now on the verge of exploding out. 2. The problems between the Blood Demon sect and the Solitary Sword sect were first mentioned in chapter 167 and again in 176. It was at this point that the emaciated old man from the Violet Fate sect rose from his cross-legged position. "Fellow Taoists from the Blood Demon sect," he said coolly, "this Dao Lake is yours." Instantly, the Violet Fate sect disciples backed away from the 3,000-meter Dao Lake he pointed to. The eyes of cultivators from the other sects flickered. Sir Giant of the Solitary Sword sect turned to look coldly toward the Violet Fate sect. Reverend Withered Dao. Reverend Withered Dao calmly looked back at him. Their gazes met, and Sir Giant looked away with a cold snort, doing nothing to interfere. The two Demon Fire patriarchs were shocked, but then seemed to remember something. Clasping hands, they bowed politely and led their group to the Dao Lake. The Blood Demon sect disciples thanked the Violet Fate sect, but their inward frustration didn't lessen. They had arrived late, losing any advantage, and their most powerful experts had just been teleported away. The once domineering Blood Demon sect was suddenly in an incredibly weak position in the ancient Dao Lakes. They were in such a bad position, they couldn't even compare to the severely weakened Black Civ sect. Furthermore, the Solitary Sword sect clearly held the position of greatest power, with 3,000-meter Dao Lakes, and would obviously be difficult to contend with. The two Demon Fire patriarchs exchanged a glance. Enduring the frustration, ignoring the ridicule from the other sects, they closed their eyes and began to meditate. As for the other Blood Demon sect disciples, they couldn't hold back their comments. "Blood Prince, when are you going to return?" "Wait until the Blood Prince returns, he'll take care of them." That teleportation trap might be strong, but considering the Blood Prince's cultivation base, he'll definitely get out of it soon. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the ancient Dao Lakes, Meng Hao was frowning. Next to him were Patriarch Darkheaven, the two Ironblood patriarchs, and the first Demon Fire patriarch, their faces flickering with various emotions. There were also 7 or 8 other Blood Demon sect disciples, sitting cross-legged in meditation, though it seemed they wouldn't hold out much longer. The teleportation continued without stop. Just now it had paused, but before anyone could act, another teleportation began. Plop! One of the disciples coughed up blood, his entire body withering into a desiccated corpse. More sounds rang out as others suffered the same fate. In a relatively short period, they had already teleported 13 times. The world in front of Meng Hao changed over and over. Each teleportation slammed an intense force into their bodies, causing their souls to shudder. Some power inside the teleportation trap was apparently consuming their energy. "Blood Prince, we can't keep going on like this," said the first Demon Fire Patriarch, his voice gloomy. "Blood Prince, what do we do?" Rumble. The teleportation ceased, and they found themselves in a grassy area. Then they vanished again. Meng Hao stood there the entire time. Finally he raised his hand, and the black-white pearls appeared, swirling around the 9th mountain. His eyes stayed fixed ahead as he waded through a few more teleportation cycles until the 30th. Ahead, he saw some Dao lakes and his eyes glittered. Without hesitation, he sent the black-white pearls in the 9th mountain out ahead. Rumbling filled the air, and the teleportation trap once again began the process. "Expand," said Meng Hao, his voice echoing out. Inside the teleportation trap, the 9th mountain began to grow 1,000 meters, 10,000, until it looked like an enormous mountain peak rising up out of the land. As soon as the mountain appeared within the ancient Dao lakes, quite a few other cultivators noticed it. The blood demon sect disciples by the 3,000-meter Dao lake brightened at the sight. Even cultivators near the 30-meter Dao lake saw it and stared with gaping mouths. It's someone trying to break out of a teleportation trap. Once you get into one of the teleportation traps, it's impossible to get out. Rumble. To attempt to move the enormous mountain, the teleportation trap had to condense huge amounts of power, and it began to shudder. In that instant of pause, Meng Hao shouted, "Go!" Immediately, Patriarch Darkheaven flew out, taking advantage of the pause to break free of the teleportation trap. Meng Hao was right behind him. But even as they neared the border, the teleportation trap surged with more power to try to block their way. "Suppress," said Meng Hao, his brow furrowed. Intense rumbling filled the air as the 9th mountain expanded once again. The teleportation trap was forced to a standstill. In that moment, Patriarch Darkheaven and the other spirit-severing patriarchs burst free. But at the same time, the teleportation trap began a shocking teleportation, rarely seen in the ancient Dao lakes. A pillar of light rose that closely resembled the eruption of a 3,000-meter Dao lake. Amidst the rumbling, Meng Hao and the 9th mountain vanished. Blood Prince. Considering the Blood Prince's strength, he should free himself within a few teleportation cycles. We should head to the central zone and seize a Dao lake as soon as possible. That's right, let's go. The 4 patriarchs had utmost faith in Meng Hao. After exchanging glances, their eyes filled with determination, and they transformed into colorful beams shooting toward the central zone. In a valley in a particular area of the ancient Dao lakes, the glow of teleportation rose into the sky. Rumbling echoed out as a figure emerged at high speed from within the valley. As soon as the figure emerged, the light of teleportation faded. Flying through the air was none other than Meng Hao. His face was pale white. As soon as he flew out from the valley, he landed on the ground and looked behind him, a trace of fear on his face. "After getting Darkheaven and the others out, I was teleported 70 more times. The cycle of teleportation is astonishing. Toward the end, it kept going faster, and my chi and blood was being sucked out, weakening me." He took a deep breath and produced some medicinal pills, quickly consuming them. Then he flew up and looked around to get his bearings. The eruption of the Dao lakes had ceased, as had most of the fighting. The disciples from the Blood Demon sect most likely followed my instructions and went to the central zone. Having determined the general direction of the 3,000-meter Dao lakes, Meng Hao started flying. The entire way, he sent out his divine sense to avoid the rifts and employed teleportation techniques. Meanwhile, near the 3,000-meter Dao lakes in the central region, the Solitary Sword sect and the Blood Demon sect were faced off with proverbial daggers drawn. The Blood Demon sect are cultivators of a demonic Dao. If they only occupied one lake, that's one thing, but they even dare to covet more. "Are you looking to die?" The Solitary Sword sect was the most powerful force in the area, having seized the initiative and taken control of 3 Dao lakes. They had 8 spirit-severing cultivators, all with cold expressions and iridescent auras. In addition to the 8, The old man called Sir Jian, sitting cross-legged off in the distance, glared at the Blood Demon sect. As for the Blood Demon sect, Patriarch Darkheaven and the others had arrived a bit earlier. Killing intent swirled around the 6 spirit-severing patriarchs as they faced off against the solitary sword sect. The Blood Demon sect is simply borrowing the Violet Fate sect's lake, and it must be returned to them. Your solitary sword sect is occupying 3 lakes. You need to give one up. Look, solitary sword sect, you can fight or share, you decide. Both sides' killing intent radiated out. The Blood Demon sect and the solitary sword sect were already mortal foes, meaning a fight between them could break out easily at any time, not to mention the potential benefit on the line in the ancient Dao lakes right now. Suddenly, the 3rd severing patriarch from the Black Civ sect rose to his feet and started laughing uproariously, his eyes glittering with coldness as he looked over at the Blood Demon sect. Blood Demon sect, I couldn't care less that your Dao is demonic. However, the Dao lakes represent good fortune for all cultivators of South Heaven. If you keep causing problems, I'll personally have to step in. Hearing this, the cultivators of the solitary sword sect began to chuckle. Sir Jian looked over at the 3rd severing patriarch and nodded cordially. The faces of the 6 patriarchs from the Blood Demon sect flickered. Next, booming laughter rang out from a middle-aged man striding out from the Golden Frost sect, tall and well-built, with skin like diamond and a full suit of armor. "Fellow Taoists from the solitary sword sect and Black Civ sect," he said, "your words couldn't be more appropriate." Further back sat 5 old men, cross-legged. When their eyes opened, they glowed brightly with the aura of spirit severing. His appearance made clear an agreement had been reached between the Golden Frost sect, the solitary sword sect, and the Black Civ sect. The combined might of 3 sects now bore down oppressively on the Blood Demon sect. In the worst position were Chen Fan and Fatty. They could do nothing about the situation, so they backed up silently. As for the Violet Fate sect and the Song clan, they stayed silent. Only the Li clan was left. The 19th Li clan patriarch flicked his sleeve, a gleam of killing intent in his eyes as he stepped forward. "Well, is your blood prince dead or not? If not, why isn't he here?" The death of the Li clan Dao child all those years ago was something they had brooded over ever since. Now that the Li clan had joined in, 4 sects stood allied. The faces of the Blood Demon sect patriarchs fell, and they backed up. There was no way they could stand up to the combined might of 4 sects. "Why waste your breath on them?" said the Black Civ sect 3rd severing patriarch, his eyes glittering. "Just drive them away, and if they won't leave, exterminate them." He leaped forward and waved his right hand. Immediately, 8 white tigers appeared, roaring as they charged toward the Blood Demon sect cultivators. The 19th Li clan patriarch also attacked, as did the solitary sword sect cultivators. More than 10 spirit-severing experts flew out and attacked at once. In the blink of an eye, a chaotic spirit-severing battle had begun. Boom! The 2 sides slammed into each other, and the 6 Blood Demon sect patriarchs were instantly sent into retreat. Facing more than 10 attacking spirit-severing experts on all sides, they simply couldn't fight back. Attack after attack met with success against the Blood Demon sect cultivators. Shocking magical items and divine abilities were employed, and the dozens of Blood Demon sect disciples present were forced back bit by bit. Even as they retreated, cultivators from the other 3 sects flew out to join the fray. Of the allied powers, the Black Civ sect held the largest grudge against the Blood Demon sect. The Li clan targeted them because of Meng Hao, and the solitary sword sect had a long-standing feud. Only the Golden Frost sect had no apparent reason to attack. Booms echoed out, and blood sprayed from Patriarch Darkheaven's mouth as he tumbled backward. Except for the first Demonfire patriarch, all the others coughed up blood and fell back too. As the fighting played out, a bloody glow rose and miserable shrieks sounded. Reverend Withered Dao of the Violet Fate sect frowned, hesitated a moment, then closed his eyes. The Song clan neither came to the Blood Demon sect's aid, nor joined the alliance of 4. Retreat! The 6 Blood Demon sect patriarchs' hearts burned like fire, but facing this force, they had no choice but to flee, surrendering the Dao Lake given to them by the Violet Fate sect. "Screw off to wherever you came from," said the 3rd severing patriarch from the Black Civ sect. "The Blood Demon sect isn't allowed in a place like this." He swished his sleeve. The 8 tigers roared, the sound transforming into terrifying ripples that slammed into the 6 Blood Demon sect patriarchs, sending them spinning backward, blood spraying from their mouths. Some of the ordinary disciples simply exploded from the intensity of the ripples. Their desire to slaughter could not have been higher. Where is the blood prince? If he doesn't come, we'll have to give up and leave. The 6 patriarchs' faces flickered with suppressed grievance as they continued to retreat. It doesn't matter who shows up, came a voice from the solitary sword sect with a cold snort. The blood demon sect is not allowed here, screw off. It was at this point a beam of light appeared off in the distance, nearing at incredible speed, like a shooting star, carrying a shocking murderous air and a will of ruthlessness that towered into the heavens. As soon as it appeared, the cultivators from the Violet Fate sect looked over, especially Chu Yuyan and Hang Sushan, their gazes intent. Xianxia couldn't stop herself from looking up. The beam of light moved so fast that in the blink of an eye it arrived, shooting past the 6 blood demon sect patriarchs to stop directly in front of them. A booming sound exploded, along with a shocking ripple that slammed into the force of cultivators from the 4 allied powers. The more than 10 spirit-severing cultivators' faces flickered, and they stopped in place. The cultivator in the vanguard, a spirit-severing expert from the Golden Frost sect, let out a blood-curdling scream as he was thrown backward, then exploded. The blood and gore that spattered about couldn't obscure the young, crimson-robed man standing there in front of the group. The young man's face was calm, but his eyes were cold enough to freeze the highest heavens. His right hand was clenched into a fist, the same fist that had just burst apart the spirit-severing expert from the Golden Frost sect. That one punch had just destroyed a first-severing expert, shaking everyone present. Meng Hao's long hair floated around him, his robe swaying gently. His second-severing cultivation base emanated shocking energy in all directions. All color in the land and sky dimmed and the wind howled, as if a tempest had arrived, sending dust flying into the air. Every eye was now fixed on Meng Hao. "Who said the blood demon sect isn't allowed here?" he said, looking around, his gaze flickering with killing intent and ruthlessness as he looked over the spirit-severing cultivators of the 4 allied sects. Behind Meng Hao, the cultivators from the blood demon sect grew excited and began to bow, offering greetings. "Blood Prince." "Greetings, Blood Prince." The face of the 3rd severing patriarch from the Black Civ sect flickered. "Meng Hao," he shouted. The cultivators from the Golden Frost sect looked shocked too, and the Li clan patriarch's eyes widened. The people from the Solitary Sword sect all filled with astonishment. In the group from the Violet Fate sect, and Zehai and Li Heilong stared blankly at Meng Hao in his blood-colored robe. It was as if memories were flitting through their minds, a young man with a very different face whose features now seemed to merge with the person before them. Chu Yuyan trembled. There were thousands of things she wanted to say to Meng Hao, but right now she couldn't say a single one. Hang Sushan, a bit more innocent and immature than Chu Yuyan, gazed at Meng Hao while thinking of everything that had happened in Holy Snow City in the Black Lands. Yifeimu stood there, taciturn, his expression complicated as he looked at Meng Hao, now a spirit-severing expert of high standing, illustrious and famous. He couldn't help but think back to when the two of them had wrangled over the title of Violet Furnace Lord. Although he didn't want to admit it, it was obvious he himself had fallen even further behind. Another person stood within the group from the Violet Fate sect, an old man in whose eyes flickered many memories of Meng Hao. He stood there quietly too, wondering if Meng Hao would remember a nobody like himself. Everything was quiet. Meng Hao looked over the group in front of him, then let his eyes rest on the 3rd severing patriarch from the Black Civ sect. "Was it you who said it?" he asked. Hearing the words, the 3rd severing patriarch's face filled with dread, his mind roaring. He thought back to how terrifying Meng Hao was last time he saw him, and backed up, his body trembling. When the others in the area saw this, it shook them even more. To strike dread into the heart of a 3rd severing expert with a single sentence was incredible. Granted, what the man had severed was only a simple, ordinary Dao, unlike those terrifying, inhuman, almighty 3rd severing experts who severed great Daos, but it still showed how powerful Meng Hao was. The man from the Golden Frost sect immediately fell back, his eyes flashing, taking the other Golden Frost experts with him. The person just killed was from their sect, so of course they could retreat. The Li clan retreated too, unwilling to even touch the razor-sharp blade that was Meng Hao. Meng Hao had burst onto the scene and destroyed a potent spirit-severing expert with a single blow. The act deeply shocked everyone who saw it, and the results were apparent. Chapter 716, Overbearing. "You want to leave," said Meng Hao, killing intent radiating from his eyes. The instant he laid eyes on the cultivators from the Black Civ sect, that desire to kill became insuppressible, nor did he want to suppress it. He wanted catharsis, he wanted to kill. Others could leave, but the cultivators from the Black Civ sect, if he hadn't seen them, it wouldn't matter. But now that he had, they had to die. They absolutely, positively had to die. Even as the words left his mouth, Meng Hao moved forward at incredible speed. He shot toward the third severing patriarch, whose face instantly fell. He had long since prepared himself, and immediately shot backward in retreat. Meng Hao, you can have our Dao Lake, we're leaving this place. Not happening, was Meng Hao's cold reply. With incredible speed, he shot forward to appear directly in front of the patriarch. He waved his hand, giving rise to an intense rumbling that made everyone in the area begin to pant and look over. That was especially true of the spirit-severing patriarchs, whose eyes glittered. They assumed this would be a fierce battle, like a fight between a dragon and a tiger, but even as the thought occurred to them, Meng Hao lifted his hand and gestured toward the Black Civ sect's third severing patriarch. Instantly, an enormous blood-colored vortex appeared around him. At the same time, a gigantic blood-colored hand magically appeared and grabbed down onto him mercilessly. Rumble! No, shrieked the old man from the Black Civ sect. He struggled with everything he had, but couldn't break free. His fleshly body withered away with incredible speed as his chi and blood was absorbed by Meng Hao. The sight caused the onlookers to gasp with shock, amazed exclamations ringing out from all directions. Blood Demon Grand Magic. That's the true magic of the Blood Demon sect, the Blood Demon Grand Magic. Sir Jian from the Solitary Sword sect stared at what was happening, his expression one of unprecedented seriousness, eyes shining with an intense, bright light as he breathed heavily. The 19th Li clan patriarch's pupils constricted, his heart skipping a beat. In the Song clan, a cultivator who appeared to be an ordinary old man suddenly lifted his head, his eyes shining with a bizarre glow. In the Violet Fate sect, Reverend Withered Dao's face filled with a strange expression. He looked at Meng Hao and let out a long, inward sigh. All this takes time to describe, but actually happened in the space of a few breaths. The Black Civ sect patriarch's miserable screams rang out in all directions, but he was decisive. Seeing his body wither rapidly and realizing he couldn't break free, he gritted his teeth and chose to self-detonate. His fleshly body exploded, the power of chi and blood surging out. Meng Hao's Blood Demon Grand Magic trembled. At the same time, the Black Civ sect patriarch's nascent divinity shot out at top speed from within the blood-colored vortex. Damn you, Meng Hao, howled the nascent divinity. I should have tortured that slut Su Qing even more when I had the chance. He shot toward a rip that had just appeared, about to enter it when. Hearing the old man's words, Meng Hao's killing intent skyrocketed. He lifted his right hand and pushed it out in front of him. In response, the black-white pearls in the 9th mountain appeared in midair, almost like Meng Hao's hands, smashing down onto the fleeing nascent divinity. BOMMMMM. The ground quaked and the air vibrated. The 9th mountain crushed down, drowning out the miserable scream that rang out. When the mountain vanished, the Black Civ sect patriarch's nascent divinity lay in fragments, completely and utterly dead. The entire process lasted only about 10 breaths. To Meng Hao, slaughtering a third severing expert was like turning over his hand. The sight threw all onlookers into deathly silence. The Blood Demon sect members, of course, were quite excited, and looked at Meng Hao with more fanaticism than ever. Fall back, said Sir Jian. The words echoed in the hearts of the Solitary Sword sect cultivators as they returned to their places at the 3 Dao Lakes. The Golden Frost sect cultivators retreated without the slightest hesitation too, as did the Li clan members. All returned to their various Dao Lakes, keeping a vigilant eye on Meng Hao the entire time. Do not leave any Black Civ sect cultivators alive, said Meng Hao calmly. Immediately, the several dozen remaining Blood Demon sect disciples shot toward the Black Civ sect cultivators next to the Dao Lake. This wasn't Meng Hao engaging in random killing. These Black Civ sect disciples had all been part of the spell formation used to dissolve Su Qing. Sad, shrill screams filled the air for about 10 breaths as the Black Civ sect's force was completely slaughtered. Everyone in the vicinity saw what was happening, but no one tried to interfere. There were also quite a few 300-meter Dao Lakes surrounding the 3,000-meter Dao Lakes. Meng Hao immediately flew to one and waved his hand, sending a blood-colored flag stabbing into the dirt next to the lake. This lake is mine, he declared. The blood-colored flag was, of course, the standard of the Blood Demon sect, its surface embroidered with the character Meng Chinese letter. This was Meng Hao's blood print standard, of which quite a few had been specially crafted by Blood Demon sect disciples during the past year. Such a standard was an item that, as Blood Prince, he had to possess as a token of his authority. When he stabbed the flag into the ground and his voice echoed out, the faces of the people in the area flickered, especially the cultivators guarding that particular lake. Meng Hao approached another nearby lake, then waved his hand to send another flag flying down. "This lake is mine. This lake is mine too. And this one. This one also," Meng Hao flashed back and forth. In the blink of an eye, more than half the 300-meter Dao lakes were marked with his Blood Prince standard. It took only a moment for blood-colored flags to fill the area. Meng Hao was like a surging flood, domineering to the extreme. It didn't matter which sect or clan the Dao Lakes originally belonged to. As long as the guards weren't from the Violet Fate sect, Meng Hao occupied it. The other sects and clans, shaken by Meng Hao's slaughter of the Black Civ sect disciples, didn't dare stop him. He whistled through the air, much to the excitement of the Blood Demon sect disciples, who flew after him to occupy the various lakes. As for the cultivators originally occupying those lakes, they retreated one by one without hesitation. While Meng Hao was in the middle of seizing one Dao lake after another, a minor eruption occurred. Not many items emerged from the Dao lakes in the center zone Meng Hao occupied, but one 300-meter Dao lake ahead of him did spit something out. This time, it wasn't a Dao shadow or a magical item, but a violet-colored humanoid beast, completely ferocious in appearance, with bat-like wings and a horn on its forehead. As it shot out of the Dao lake, it transformed into a violet beam of blinding light. It roared as it shot forward, trying to break through the shield surrounding the lake. Immediately, excited cries rang out. "It's a beast, a violet beast. That's a violet beast. Its body is like a treasure. You can refine countless items from it. Violet beasts like that are virtually extinct." Some people were too shocked to speak. The instant the beast appeared, the cultivators guarding the lake shot toward it. Before they could get near, a boom echoed out. The beast roared, the sound transforming into ripples that surged toward them. The cultivators retreated, but Meng Hao moved forward. He slapped his hand down, causing the image of a gigantic hand to appear and shoot toward the violet beast. The violet beast let out a shrill cry and was about to fight back when the huge hand smashed onto it. Its body crumbled, smashed into the surface of the lake, a mess of flesh and bones. Meng Hao quickly collected it up. "This lake is also mine," he said calmly, throwing down a flag. In the blink of an eye, Meng Hao had occupied nearly 70% of the 300-meter Dao lakes. When he finished, everyone watched with complex expressions as he returned to the area with the 3,000-meter Dao lakes. Along with other Blood Demon sect members, he occupied the Dao lake formerly held by the Black Civ sect. Afterward, the Blood Demon sect members explained everything that had happened before, including the Violet Fate sect offering them a Dao lake. After hearing the explanation, Meng Hao looked toward the Violet Fate sect. Many people looked back at him and their gazes met. Meng Hao saw Chu Yuyan and Hang Sushan. He saw Nzehai, Lin Heilong and Yi Feimu and that other old man. "Bai Yun," he thought, instantly recognizing the man who had been a fellow apprentice alchemist with him when he joined the Violet Fate sect. In his former days, Bai Yunlai had been known as the young man who knew everything about the East Pill division. Now, he was an old man in his declining years. Meng Hao avoided Chu Yuyan's gaze. In his heart there was only Su Qing. Chu Yuyan seemed to sense his state of mind, a tremor running through her. She lowered her head. Meng Hao sighed inwardly, then glanced over at Fatty and Chen Fan. Finally, he closed his eyes for a moment. When they opened, his pupils were once again as cold as ice. He turned his gaze to the Li clan, then began walking toward them. Blood Demon sect cultivators followed him excitedly. The 19th Li clan patriarch's face flickered. 4 other old men from the Li clan walked out to stand with him, as if facing a mortal enemy. The other Li clan members nervously produced magical items. "Meng Hao, what are you doing?" bellowed the 19th Li clan patriarch. "Screw off," replied Meng Hao. It was a single command, but it rang out like claps of thunder. Everyone in the Li clan below the spirit-severing stage coughed up blood. As for the 19th Li clan patriarch and the other 4 spirit-severing patriarchs, their faces went pale and 2 even staggered backward. "You're going too far," cried the 19th Li clan patriarch. "Fellow Taoists Sir Jian and Han Yun, don't tell me you're just going to ignore this." Clearly, the 19th Li clan patriarch was terrified of Meng Hao because of the slaughter that had just occurred with the Black Civ sect. Screw off, repeated Meng Hao, his eyes flashing with murderous intent. Again, it was only a single command, but it caused heaven and earth to tremble. Except for the 19th patriarch, all the spirit-severing patriarchs coughed up blood. Some of the ordinary cultivators couldn't endure it, and their bodies exploded. This chapter was sponsored by Jusa. Chapter 717, Old Friends Meet by the Dao Lake. The 19th Li clan patriarch's face fell. Gritting his teeth, he ceased hesitating and backed up. The other four spirit-severing patriarchs looked at Meng Hao in shock as they, too, retreated. Along with their fellow clan members, they left the Dao Lake. Everything within 30,000 meters of this spot is a restricted zone, said Meng Hao slowly. Any of you who dares to enter will be killed. By me. The Li clan members sullenly moved to a position 30,000 meters away. A buzz of conversation immediately rose among the bystanders. Just what cultivation base does this Meng Hao have? He single-handedly fought the entire Black Civ sect before. Granted, he was defeated by 6 Daos, but according to the rumors, he's the #1 figure under Dao seeking. He just killed a third severing expert. Calling him the #1 person under Dao seeking is definitely appropriate. As the conversation rippled on, the Blood Demon sect disciples took possession of the Dao Lake. Forgetting about the lake the Violet Fate sect had given them, they now controlled 2 Dao Lakes. The Blood Demon sect patriarch's killing intent boiled as they waited for Meng Hao to accomplish his next goal. Meng Hao stood there, ignoring the Violet Fate sect, his gaze passing over the Song clan to fall on the Golden Frost sect. The middle-aged Golden Frost sect cultivator's face darkened. Moments ago he'd wanted to aid the Li clan, but the feeling he got from Meng Hao was too terrifying. It was in that brief hesitation that the Li clan dispersed. Now that Meng Hao was staring at them, everyone from the Golden Frost sect began to tremble inwardly. Fatty hesitated a moment, then looked up at Meng Hao. Their gazes met for a moment, and Meng Hao looked away toward the Solitary Sword sect. The Golden Frost sect let out a collective inward sigh of relief. The middle-aged man looked thoughtful for a moment before his eyes turned cold. When Meng Hao looked at the Solitary Sword sect, he saw Chen Fan standing toward the back. His cultivation base was at the great circle of core formation, his face sallow, his body thin. When Meng Hao looked over, he returned the gaze. After a long moment, Meng Hao began to look away from the Solitary Sword sect. But it was in that instant he suddenly sensed danger, coming from someone behind Sir Jian. Sir Jian's eyes were ice-cold as he stared at Meng Hao. When Meng Hao stared back in the same direction, it almost seemed as if an intangible rumbling resulted. Sir Jian gave a muffled groan, his body quivering. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, a nervous expression on his face as he realized he couldn't withstand the pressure weighing down on him. And then he realized, Meng Hao wasn't even looking at him. Rather, Meng Hao was looking at the teenager behind him, an unremarkable, rather frail-looking boy. As soon as Meng Hao looked at him, he lifted his chin slightly and looked back calm. Their simple act of looking at each other actually injured Sir Jian. Realizing Meng Hao was looking at the teenager behind him, Sir Jian's heart began to thump. Suddenly, as everyone watched, Meng Hao walked toward the Solitary Sword sect. The atmosphere in the area couldn't have been heavier. Every step he took rang out like thunder. He headed toward the third of the Solitary Sword sect's Dao Lakes, causing the cultivators gathered there to brace themselves as if facing a deadly foe. The spirit-severing cultivators' faces grew anxious, breathing heavily. Meng Hao looked back at the teenager behind Sir Jian and coolly said, I want this Dao Lake too. Impossible, blurted Sir Jian, instantly rising. The Solitary Sword sect disciples drew their swords, and the 8 spirit-severing experts' cultivation bases exploded with intensity. In one short moment, the sword chi of the Solitary Sword sect burst out, the wind screaming, a riot of colors flashing in the sky. But it was at this moment the teenager behind Sir Jian suddenly spoke. His voice was hoarse and ancient, not matching his youthful appearance at all. Take it. Sir Jian's expression immediately changed as he turned and bowed his head respectfully. The other spirit-severing cultivators stared in shock, then looked at the teenager and seemed to suddenly realize something important. One by one, their expressions filled with incredible respect, fanaticism, and inspiration. Since you like this particular Dao Lake, continued the teenager, I'll give it to you. He spoke with a smile, but his eyes were as cold as ice, and he did nothing to conceal it. When Meng Hao looked at the teenager, it felt like he was looking at a sword. A shocking, astonishing sword. Even as the words left the teenager's mouth, The solitary sword sect disciples surrounding their third Tao lake all fell back, leaving it open for Meng Hao. Meng Hao nodded, and blood demon sect disciples moved forward to take control of the Tao lake. As of now, the situation regarding the 3,000-meter lakes in the central zone of the ancient Tao lakes was as such: Blood Demon Sect 3, Solitary Sword Sect 2, Golden Frost Sect 2, Violet Fate Sect 2, Song Clan 1, Black Civ Sect exterminated, Li Clan driven 30,000 meters away. As for the 300-meter Tao lakes, including the 10 surrounding each of the 3,000-meter lakes, there were more than 700 in total. Of those, more than 400 bore the standard of the Blood Demon Sect's junior leader. Of course, there were only a few dozen Blood Demon Sect cultivators in this area. Even with one disciple per lake, hundreds of lakes still had nothing but a flag to watch over them. Meng Hao sat down next to the 3,000-meter lake formerly belonging to the Black Civ Sect, closed his eyes, and rotated his cultivation base as he waited for the next Tao lake eruption. Those in the surrounding sects and clans who knew him all sighed inwardly. This version of Meng Hao and his coldness made him seem like a stranger. In the Song clan, eccentric Song looked over at Meng Hao and sighed emotionally, thinking back to the time in the state of Zhao when he first saw Meng Hao. It was the same for Wu Dinkyu and the Violet Fate sect, in the same mood as eccentric Song. In fact, he was thinking about a certain spear, which still existed to this day in the Violet Fate sect. 1. If you forgot about the story of the spear, you can read an apocryphal version in chapter 211. Time passed. The 3,000-meter lake region was completely silent. As for the 30,000-meter lake, all those lakes surrounded, not even a ripple could be seen on its surface. It looked almost exactly like a huge mirror. Chu Yuyan sat quietly for a long time before finally rising and walking out from the crowd of Violet Fate sect disciples. Reverend Withered Dao looked over, but did nothing to stop her from approaching the Blood Demon sect. Her actions immediately drew the attention of quite a few people. As she neared the area where Meng Hao sat cross-legged, a Blood Demon sect disciple blocked her. "I want to see Meng Hao," she said softly, looking over at him sitting cross-legged not too far off. The Blood Demon sect disciple hesitated, aware the Blood Prince had ties to the Violet Fate sect. Meng Hao opened his eyes and looked over at Chu Yuyan. "Let her pass," he said. The disciple immediately stepped aside. Chu Yuyan said nothing as she walked up to Meng Hao and sat down next to him, a complex expression in her eyes. At first, neither of them said anything. After what seemed like a very long time, she finally spoke. "It's been a few hundred years. Did you ever go back to that ravine?" Meng Hao knew exactly which ravine she meant, the place where the two of them truly got to know each other, where he acquired the good fortune of the Blood Immortal legacy. "No, I didn't," he replied calmly. "I did," she said, looking him in the eyes. Meng Hao didn't respond. Chu Yuyan stared back out at the Tao lake, her expression bitter. Several hours passed, and she finally stood up and began walking back toward the Violet Fate sect. After 7 steps, she stopped. "If there was no Su Qing." "No ifs," Meng Hao replied softly. "But why?" "The opportunity was missed. What's done is done." Chu Yuyan trembled, then left Meng Hao's Tao lake and returned to the Violet Fate sect, tears streaming down her face. Hang Sushan came to see Meng Hao, innocent and making no attempt to conceal her lingering feelings for him. Fatty came carrying a wild chicken. Meng Hao glanced at it, then summoned flames. The two sat next to the Tao lake for a long time, eating wild chicken while everyone around watched on. Fatty laughed and filed away at his teeth with a sword. In the end, he pulled Meng Hao into a bear hug and left. And Zehai and Lin Heilong both came, sighing, recounting past times, avoiding any mention of Grandmaster Pill Demon. They knew well that to Meng Hao, the most important person in the Violet Fate sect was his master. Yifeimu didn't come. The last person from the Violet Fate sect to come was an old man. His cultivation base was not very high, but as soon as he neared, Meng Hao's face broke into a smile. "By Yunlei." "Fang, Meng Hao." The old man inadvertently started to call Meng Hao by the name Fang Mu. People came from the Song clan, the Golden Frost sect, and the Solitary Sword sect. Earlier they had faced off with hostility, but now they came to chat, people of the same generation as Meng Hao in the southern domain, Dao children and chosen, the most powerful merely in the nascent soul stage. Seeing Meng Hao, they couldn't help but think of all that had happened in the past. Meng Hao didn't see Li Tiandao of the Li clan, who hadn't come to the Dao Lakes this time. 1. Li Tiandao is Dao child of the Li clan. Meng Hao beat the crap out of him in the demon immortal sect in chapter 610, then ripped him off in chapter 612. As for Wang Lihai, and that figure deep in his memories, Wang Tengfei, after the genocide of the Wang clan carried out by their 10th patriarch, Meng Hao wasn't sure if they were even still alive. There was one person Meng Hao hadn't seen at all since returning to the southern domain, Han Bei of the Black Sieve sect. The last visitor was Chen Fan. He looked older than before and hadn't yet reached the nascent soul stage. His body was somewhat emaciated, sharply contrasting with the Chen Fan Meng Hao remembered. Many matters of the heart had built up in him over the past centuries, it seemed, until they were suffocating him. He didn't say much at first and brought a flagon of alcohol with him, drinking from it continuously. It was hard to say when, but at some point he'd begun drinking daily. It had reached the point where he didn't just need to drink, he needed to get drunk. He was no longer the blazing sun he'd been in past years, nor one of the 7 swords. One fellow sect member after another had surpassed him, and his dreams of rising within the solitary sword sect hadn't come true. Still he smiled at Meng Hao, and it held the same warmth it always had, the same concern and love. "Elder brother Chen," said Meng Hao, looking him over. Every time he saw his old friends, he couldn't help but think of the Reliance sect. "Make sure to focus well on your cultivation," said Chen Fan. "If you ever reach immortal ascension, I can boast to people that I have a little brother who's an immortal." He chuckled, clapped Meng Hao on the shoulder, took a long swig of alcohol, and headed back toward the solitary sword sect. Meng Hao could clearly see the scorn with which many solitary sword sect disciples looked at Chen Fan. Chapter 718, Give Me This Lake. Rumble. Several days later, the ancient Dao lakes began erupting once again. An enormous eruption in which glowing pillars of light shot into the sky from roughly 80% of the Dao lakes and geysers. It was the same in the inner region as the outer. When the Dao lakes erupted, countless Dao shadows appeared. In the inner region, some 300 Dao lakes even erupted with magical items and other treasures. Of the 3,000-meter Dao lakes, 2 erupted with Dao shadows and 8 spat out magical items. The magical items varied, intact ones and ones broken apart or missing parts, some ancient and dilapidated, others brand new. Even more numerous were fragments of magical items and broken bits of rock and dirt from ancient ruins. Of the Blood Demon sect's 3 Dao lakes, 2 spat out magical items. As for the lake Meng Hao occupied, a Dao shadow appeared above it. The other Dao shadow appeared from within the 3,000-meter lake belonging to the Golden Frost sect, the one Fatty was seated next to. That particular Dao shadow depicted a plump fellow cultivating some formidable magical technique. Fatty's eyes went wide, and he immediately began to seek enlightenment. The eruption instantly shattered the previous quietude, though it didn't descend into chaos. The Dao lakes had already been divided up, so unless something incredibly shocking appeared, there'd be no frenzied fighting like in the outer region. Whoever occupied a given lake had rights to whatever it spat out. Immediately, countless cultivators flew up toward their various Dao lakes. Rumbling filled the air. The 6 Blood Demon sect patriarchs began collecting the various objects spat out. All this takes time to describe, but actually took only about 10 breaths for all the items from the 3,000-meter Dao lakes to be collected up by the various sects. Attention then turned to the 300-meter lakes. Especially the more than 400 300-meter lakes belonging to Meng Hao. More than 100 had spat out magical items, floating there in midair, along with some Dao shadows and other miscellaneous objects. The sight was shocking and would move anyone who saw it. Despite that, not a single fight broke out. Meng Hao's earlier actions had clearly shown how powerful he was and how unbridled his methods could be. Any cultivator who coveted an item under one of the Blood Prince's standards would think long and hard before doing anything. The Blood Demon sect disciples were tired but happy, bustling about for nearly 2 hours collecting the various objects the Dao lakes had spat up, while cultivators from the other sects and clans looked on enviously. Just as they were about to deliver all the objects to Meng Hao, one of the 300-meter lakes that had spat out a Dao shadow suddenly began to rumble. Immediately, large numbers of cultivators rose to their feet, eyes burning with passion. A second eruption. It's common for Dao geysers to erupt twice. For a 30-meter Dao lake to do so is uncommon. For a 300-meter Dao lake to erupt a second time is rare. A second eruption almost certainly means a precious item will appear. Up to this point, Meng Hao had been meditating, But now that one of the Tao lakes was erupting a second time, he opened his eyes. Rumble! Bright light blasted out from the Tao lake as a corpse was spat out from within. A corpse? The corpse of a cultivator from ancient times. Wow, I have to get that. Corpses were incredibly rare, and the instant it appeared, the solitary sword sect, the golden frost sect, the violet fate sect, the Song clan, and even the distant Li clan were shaken. But the Tao lake erupting a second time happened to fly a blood-colored flag that instantly calmed quite a few people down. Not everyone calmed down, though. 3 spirit-severing experts from the Golden Frost sect flew out with glittering eyes, believing that Meng Hao had refrained from taking action against them earlier out of apprehension, a fact they could exploit to keep him in check. The 3 cultivators flew up and shot directly toward the 300-meter Tao lake. The 6 blood demon sect patriarchs instantly moved to intercept. How dare you, Golden Frost sect? What gall? When Meng Hao saw what was happening, a cold smile turned up the corners of his mouth. He slapped his hand onto the ground, causing everything to tremble, his body transforming into an afterimage that vanished completely. His incredible speed far exceeded both the 3 Golden Frost sect cultivators and the Blood Demon sect patriarchs. He appeared next to the Tao lake in the blink of an eye, waved his right hand to collect the corpse, then turned to stare coldly at the 3 men from the Golden Frost sect. It seems you 3 are looking to die. The 3 cultivators' faces flickered. Shocked by Meng Hao's speed, they retreated without hesitation. At the same time, the armored man from the Golden Frost sect flew out, followed by the other Golden Frost experts. Meng Hao snorted coldly, raised his right hand, and made a grasping motion. The blood demon grand magic appeared. A huge vortex surrounded the 3 cultivators, and a bloody hand appeared. Immediately, the 3 old men began to be consumed. Miserable shrieks rang out as the 3 cultivators exerted every scrap of power to try to free themselves, all to no avail. "Stay your hand," roared the man in the golden armor, speeding through the air with explosive speed. The 5 cultivators behind him performed double-handed incantations, then pointed forward. Shockingly, the illusory images of puppets encapsulated them. The puppets were dozens of meters tall. As they flew forward, the armored man performed another incantation, blue veins popping on his forehead as another puppet image appeared above him. Cracking sounds rang out as the puppets quickly merged together, transforming into an enormous golden puppet, 300 meters tall, carrying a golden greatsword. It emanated a shocking pressure that made everything tremble. A similarly shocking voice rumbled from the puppet's mouth, "Stay your hand." The voice turned into powerful sound waves, spreading out in all directions. "Too late," replied Meng Hao, his voice cold. He clenched his hand into a fist, and a boom resonated out. The 3 Golden Frost sect spirit-severing cultivators let out blood-curdling screams as they were crushed into a bloody pulp, their chi and blood streaming toward Meng Hao and merging into his body, transforming into a shocking power raging inside him. As the 3 nascent divinities frenziedly tried to escape, the 6 blood demon sect patriarchs shot in pursuit. "Damn it," cried the man in the golden armor. "Do you really think the Golden Frost sect is afraid of you?" He and the 5 cultivators behind him performed incantation gestures in unison. In response, the resplendent puppet began to emit a shocking aura bordering on Tao-seeking. The instant the aura appeared, the faces of the surrounding sects and clans flickered. That aura is borderline Tao-seeking. That's the supreme magic of the Golden Frost sect, the Golden Frost marionette. The golden puppet raised its greatsword and slashed down. A ripping sound rang out as a 30-meter rift appeared. An aura close to Tao-seeking exploded out, transforming into a pressure that could weigh down anyone in the spirit-severing stage. "Die!" cried the 6 Golden Frost sect cultivators, their voices joining into a shout that shook everything. "Tao-seeking aura, huh?" said Meng Hao, eyes glittering. "I have that too." The chi and blood power of the 3 spirit-severing cultivators, combined with the dissipating remainder of what he'd absorbed from the 3rd severing patriarch of the Black Civ sect, fused together inside him and exploded out. He clenched his hand into a fist and punched directly toward the incoming sword. Rumble! The air shattered under the power of the fist. A black hole appeared, not 30 meters but 90 meters wide, raging with a Tao-seeking aura. Tao-seeking was an embodiment of natural law, a stage in which such laws fused with the body. The natural laws were based on the enlightenment of the Tao that accompanied the 3rd severing. Tao-seeking was the time to see whether the Taos of the three severings conflicted with each other, an introspection of the heart that could not be interfered with or influenced in any way. If one had been correct in their Tao, that was that. If they'd erred, there was nothing to be done. If correct, one entered Tao seeking. If incorrect, the Tao vanished. So this so-called aura was a Tao aura. As the aura spread out, the surrounding cultivators gasped. Sir Jian, Reverend Withered Tao, and the Song Clan Spirit Severing Patriarch leader were especially shocked, watching as the power from Meng Hao's fist connected with that of the greatsword. BOMMMM. The golden greatsword shattered into pieces that swirled about like flower blossoms. The puppet shook violently, numerous cracks spreading across its surface. A look of shock appeared on its face, and then it exploded. As the puppet blew up, the 6 cultivators inside, including the man in the golden armor, spat blood. Their bodies sagged, expressions astonished, as they retreated at full speed. As for Meng Hao's fist, it lost its Tao aura. The power had come from what he'd gained using the blood demon grand magic, not from within himself. Now that the energy had been released in his first blow, he couldn't make a second similar strike. The more I fight with the blood demon grand magic, the more ferocious it becomes. Eyes glittering, he shot after the 6 retreating figures. The 3 nascent divinities being chased by the 6 blood demon patriarchs couldn't escape. At this point, they'd already been sealed up and collected. The Golden Frost sect's power base in the area was now significantly weakened. Seeing Meng Hao flying toward him, the man in the golden armor felt his heart tighten with anxiety. Gritting his teeth, he called out, "The Golden Frost sect will give you a 3,000-meter Tao lake." "One won't do," shot back one of the 6 patriarchs. "Give us 2. "Damn it!" The cultivators of the Golden Frost sect grumbled, and the man in the gold armor's face fell. He'd feared Meng Hao's strength earlier and hadn't wanted to end up fighting him. He was just about to agree when Meng Hao's eyes fell on Fatty, sitting next to the Tao lake staring at the Tao shadow. He then looked at the other lake and pointed. "Give me that lake." The man in the golden armor gaped a moment, then quickly nodded. He looked at Fatty and finally put the pieces together. The reason Meng Hao hadn't moved against them earlier wasn't any apprehension about the Golden Frost sect, but Li Fugui. The Golden Frost sect retreated to the Tao lake with the Tao shadow, and the Blood Demon sect occupied another 3,000-meter Tao lake. As of now, they had a total of 4. The appearance of a Tao-seeking aura ensured Meng Hao would now be completely and utterly famous within the great sects and clans of the Southern Domain. The battle would soon become legend in the Southern Domain, and Meng Hao's name, and his titles of Blood Prince of the Blood Demon sect and Grandmaster Pill Cauldron would rise to complete prominence. Most shocking was that not 1, but 2 instances of Tao-seeking aura had occurred, inviting comparison between them and making it all the more astonishing. The first was the Tao-seeking aura of the Golden Frost sect puppet. Moments ago, everyone in the inner region of the ancient Tao lake sensed it, but few recognized it for what it was. What they could tell was that the aura was fearsome to the extreme, astounding every cultivator in the area. Whose aura is that? It's so terrifying, it almost feels like heavenly might. Even our sex patriarch doesn't have an aura like that. Tens of thousands of cultivators in the central region of the ancient Tao lakes, all from famous sects and clans of the Southern Domain, could sense the terrifying pressure of the aura. The pressure was so intense that even the Tao shadows above the Tao geysers and lakes distorted, as if some intangible force were affecting them. Tao-seeking aura. It's definitely the aura of Tao-seeking. Heavens, don't tell me there's a Tao-seeking treasure in one of the Tao lakes. Or what if it's a Tao-seeking eccentric who came here personally? Rumble. Even as everyone looked around in astonishment, another pulse of Tao-seeking aura exploded out, far more intense than the first. It shook everything. Winds seethed, and even the divine abilities of the cultivators in the area were affected, dissolving into chaos. Magical items trembled, as if losing their connection to their owners. A natural law descended, pulsing with a strange power that pressured all the cultivators, suppressing their cultivation bases while temporarily increasing the power of their fleshly bodies. Because of the Tao-seeking aura, some of the Tao shadows above the Tao geysers distorted to the point of destruction. Heavens, another aura. This aura is even stronger than the first. 2 pulses of aura means it's not a Tao-seeking treasure. No, there are 2 Tao-seeking experts fighting. Who is it? What Tao-seeking eccentric showed up? There are very few Tao-seeking cultivators in the lands of the Southern Domain. Count them all and there can't be more than 30, and most have been in secluded meditation for countless years. A huge commotion filled the entire region of the Dao Lakes as Meng Hao and the Golden Frost sect puppet slammed into each other. Two massive Dao-seeking forces collided, sending out a shockwave that swept out like a gale-force wind. Most of the Dao shadows were destroyed, and hundreds of thousands of cultivators felt as if their minds were under barrage, stunned, needing a long moment to recover. In contrast, things quickly settled down in the inner region of the ancient Dao Lakes. After the Golden Frost sect submitted, peace and calm returned. Meng Hao now sat cross-legged next to the Dao Lake, contemplating the enormous Dao shadow. The eruption of the Dao Lakes had caused two Dao shadows to appear above the 3,000-meter lakes. One was being studied by Fatty, the other by Meng Hao. The Dao shadow Meng Hao studied was that of a middle-aged cultivator in a simple, ancient Taoist ensemble, sitting cross-legged, meditating, a drop of blood hovering in front of him. He performed incantations, and ghost images sprang up around his body. At a glance, Meng Hao could tell the Dao shadow was cultivating some sort of clone magic. He couldn't determine the Dao shadow's cultivation base, but could tell that in certain aspects, the clone magic resembled the withering flame demon magic true self Dao. Meng Hao looked over the image a few times, then began to immerse himself in studying it. He'd examined the withering flame demon magic true self Dao many times over the years, gaining a general understanding of it. But some parts he couldn't completely understand. He knew the general process, but not exactly how to carry it out. Every time he felt he'd gained enlightenment on some important aspect and lifted his hand to perform the incantation, he discovered his understanding didn't actually amount to anything. So the appearance of a Dao image like this was definitely a lucky break. Time went by, and soon 3 months had passed. The eruptions of the ancient Dao lakes grew more intense. At first they'd erupt once every 4 or 5 days. In the last month, the frequency increased to every other day. The quantity of items spat out also increased. 7 or 8 corpses had appeared, as well as 5 beasts. The sects and clans fought bitterly over them, and the victors made incredible gains. Although more and more items erupted from the Dao lakes, more than half the lakes were controlled by the Blood Demon sect, yet nobody went near them. Meng Hao's actions 3 months before ensured that anyone who even thought of snatching an item from one would instantly recall the violent repercussions that would follow. As such, the Blood Demon sect disciples were the most exhausted of all. More and more magical items were delivered to Meng Hao, and over these 3 months, he built up quite a stash. As for Meng Hao himself, he never moved from the lakeside, studying the Dao shadow. As long as he didn't disperse it himself, it would remain in place, a special feature of the 3,000-meter lakes. Fatty had emerged from his meditation 2 months earlier, seemingly enlightened on many things. Afterward, he closed his eyes again and continued cultivating. 2 more months passed. The Dao lakes were now erupting once a day. To the cultivators of the southern domain, the ancient Dao lakes had become something like a paradise. As long as one secured control of a Dao geyser or Dao lake and avoided wandering randomly, shocking good fortune was guaranteed. To the cultivators in the central region, though, the rising frequency meant only one thing. The main lake would soon experience a massive eruption. The pivotal moment in this surge of activity was about to arrive. The 30,000-meter Dao lake, which hadn't produced even a single wave the entire time, was finally going to erupt. According to the ancient records, the 30,000-meter Dao lake wouldn't erupt with just one object. It would spit out many items at once, and among them were sure to be precious treasures. It was even possible for magical items to appear equivalent to the legacy treasures of the sects and clans, items that would essentially give a sect or clan the equivalent of a Dao-seeking eccentric. A possibility like that was enough to drive the cultivators of the southern domain mad with desire. Gradually, more and more eyes fixed on the 30,000-meter main lake. Meng Hao, meanwhile, remained immersed in seeking enlightenment, and had already formed some speculations about the withering flame demon magic true self Dao. Withering flame, demon magic, true self Dao, this is not just a clone magic. There are other Taoist magics hidden within. This enlightenment made Meng Hao's mind and heart tremble. He'd never seen a divine ability or magical technique so profoundly layered. After another month, the ancient Dao lakes were erupting every few hours. The disciples of the Blood Demon sect were swamped, with no time to rest as they shot back and forth between erupting Dao lakes to collect magical items and miscellaneous objects. To everyone else in the central region, They almost looked like they were harvesting crops. The blood demon sect disciples were in pain from all the hard work, but happy. The members of the other sects and clans, watching them bustle about, felt a bit of pain too, and were not happy. Least happy of all were the members of the Li clan, still positioned 30,000 meters away. They could do nothing but watch helplessly as more and more magical items erupted from the Dao Lakes. They didn't dare step even a foot past the 30,000-meter border. Although there were Dao Lakes in the area they occupied, they couldn't compare to the ones further in. Better than nothing, of course, but the Li clan cultivators only grew more frustrated by the day. Their hatred for Meng Hao increased with each passing day. Despite that, they didn't dare cross that 30,000-meter mark. Meng Hao was just far too powerful and intimidating. The members of the Solitary Sword sect, the Golden Frost sect, the distant Li clan, and the Song clan all looked toward the 30,000-meter main lake, suppressing their emotions and waiting. Come on, hurry up. The 30,000-meter main lake is going to erupt soon. We've been waiting this entire time just for this day. The only thing we don't know is exactly when the eruption will occur. That Meng Hao's cultivation base is just too high, but we don't need to fight him. When the 30,000-meter lake erupts, the rules here will change. The teleportation talisman that didn't work before will function. Once the lake erupts, all you have to do is grab an item and use a greater teleportation talisman to get away. The real competition will be over who's fastest. Meng Hao might have a high cultivation base, but he's only one person. With so many items, we'll just have to wait and see who gets lucky. The Violet Fate sect was also taking things seriously, though given their close ties to Meng Hao, their attitude toward him was much warmer. The Song clan kept to themselves, but they had their ambitions too. All the sects and clans had their hearts set on the main lake. As for the teenager sitting cross-legged behind Sir Jian in the Solitary Sword sect, his eyes shone with a strange light as he looked toward the 30,000-meter main lake. The reason I sent my clone here in the first place was for this instance of good fortune, he thought. If my augury was correct, then the good fortune I seek is coming with this eruption. That rascal Meng Hao might have heaven-defying power, but if we end up fighting, I'll have no choice but to subdue him. In the Golden Frost sect, the man in the armor glanced at Meng Hao, then exchanged looks with the people behind him. They could all see the hesitation in each other's eyes. Then their eyes glittered, no longer with hesitation but determination. Fight. Cultivation is all about the smash and grab. When it comes to luck and good fortune, it won't just come to you randomly. You have to fight for it. The entire central region of the Dao Lakes gradually filled with an oppressive aura. No one spoke, and all attention focused on the coming eruption of the 30,000-meter main lake. Meng Hao was still concentrated on enlightenment, though he wasn't looking at the Dao shadow anymore. His eyes were closed as he pondered the truths of the withering flame demon magic true self Dao. 3 days later. The land quaked as all the Dao lakes ceased erupting. The lake in front of Meng Hao began to vanish. Everything blurred. The 3,000-meter lakes, the 300-meter lakes, the 30-meter lakes, all of them dried up and shrank rapidly. Even the Dao geysers drained completely. It almost seemed like someone beneath all the lakes was breathing in, inhaling the water away. Of course, what came after an inhalation was an exhalation. The 30,000-meter main lake is going to erupt. It's going to start. This is when the true good fortune appears. I wonder what the 30,000-meter main lake is going to spit out. I heard the Solitary Sword sect's precious treasure came from the eruption of the main lake. The teenager from the Solitary Sword sect rose to his feet. The armored man from the Golden Frost sect was panting. The cultivators from the Song clan stood there with glittering eyes. Reverend Withered Dao pulsed with ripples. 30,000 meters away, the Li clan cultivators focused all the power in their bodies. Only Meng Hao still had his eyes closed. And then, the formerly placid 30,000-meter Dao lake was marred by ripples, as if something bubbled beneath its surface. BOMM. Chapter 720, Everything Explodes. With the exception of the 30,000-meter Dao lake, all the Dao lakes and geysers were drying up. Splits and cracks appeared across the entire landscape, some of them enormous. Teleportation traps flashed in and out madly, sometimes appearing by the thousands, sweeping across the land. As the water of the 3,000-meter lakes lowered, the South Heaven cultivators outside the inner region began to withdraw. They knew the greatest windfall of all was just around the corner. Unfortunately, it was good fortune they could never acquire. Only cultivators in the inner region would have that chance. Anyone remaining in the outer region would be killed during the eruption. Currently, hundreds of thousands of cultivators milled around outside the border, peering inward. Even though they had no chance at the good fortune themselves, witnessing the event was still an incredible opportunity. For all they knew, they might gain enlightenment leading to a breakthrough into another stage of cultivation. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the main lake. RUMMMMBBBBLLE. The ground quaked as the 30,000-meter lake exploded. It's difficult to describe how shocking the scene was, and how completely gobsmacked everyone was. The only thing that can be said is that across the enormous outer region of the ancient Tao lakes, massive fissures spread as if some enormous gravitational force underground were causing the land to sink. The land itself was too brittle, so fissures and cracks appeared as it sank. When the entire land had sunk to a certain degree, it reversed itself, and amid continuous rumbling, inflated back to its original state, like an exhalation following an inhalation. It was almost as if a giant lay deep beneath the ground, breathing, causing the land to sink and rise. As for the single 30,000-meter main lake, it formed what seemed a passageway connecting the ground to the heavens above, something completely unique in all existence. It was the epicenter of the explosive exhalation. Water surged up from the 30,000-meter lake into the air, forming a massive column. From a distance, the sight was completely astonishing. It wasn't a pillar of light, but when illuminated by sunlight, the column of water glittered brightly with a rainbow of colors, dazzling to the extreme, its allure irresistible. Of course, what drew people toward it wasn't the light itself, but the great Taos of heaven and earth that seemed contained within. In this moment, a blurry figure appeared in midair outside the Tao lakes among the hundreds of thousands of cultivators, though none of them could see him. He was a young man in a Taoist robe, a black wind swirling around him, his eyes glittering as he stared at the Tao Lakes region. So I didn't come in vain this time. My coffin altar sect of the northern reaches uncovered the fact that great fortune is available for me here. I, Zhou Chen, have arrived, so how could the good fortune possibly escape me? 1. Zhou Chen's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Zhu Shane. Zhou is a common surname. Chen means dust or dirt. The young man clearly didn't have a Tao-seeking cultivation base, but his body emanated faint, virtually undetectable bits of Tao-seeking aura. He appeared to be scanning the area for something in particular when he suddenly jerked his head toward the ancient Tao lakes. He frowned. Hun, damn it, that guy's here too, Lu Bai. 2. Lu Bai's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Lu Bai. Lu is common surname. Bai means cypress or cedar. Off in a different direction, a burly man stood on the peak of a mountain, garments crafted from animal skins, completely barbaric in appearance. He held a flagon of alcohol in one hand, and at his feet was the corpse of an outlander beast. Occasionally, he'd rip some flesh off the corpse and eat it raw, eyes glittering with a savage gleam. So quite a few people are here from the northern reaches, the man thought. Well, the good fortune here belongs to me, Dai Yi of the Desolate Clan, and I don't just want the good fortune, I'm gonna chow down on some of these southern domain cultivators. Their flesh is soft, definitely much more delicious than the people from the northern reaches. 3. Dai Yi's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Dai Ai. Dai is a surname which also means emperor or god. Yi means wild or rough. A smile twisted his face as he stared down at the ancient Tao Lakes region. Suddenly he caught sight of something and his face flickered with rage. Lu Bai from the Imperial Bloodline Sect 4, an organization with a name very similar to this sect, was mentioned in Chapter 599. Damn it. He's generally acknowledged to be the #1 figure under Tao seeking in the northern reaches, and is also one of the 4 great young Starlords of South Heaven. What's he doing here? At the second severing level, he can fight early Tao seeking. He's inhuman. Considering he's such a hotshot superstar with access to limitless good fortune, what the hell is he doing here? As the thousands of teleportation traps swept through the ancient Tao lakes, a young man proceeded along, expression cool. He seemed gentle, extremely good-looking, to the point of perfection. The teleportation traps in his path were completely incapable of even touching him. What an interesting place, he thought, although it doesn't suit me very well. Why did the exalted Dawn Immortal send me here? According to her, I would encounter the enemy I am destined to face. How amusing. I wonder who this supposed enemy will turn out to be. As he moved forward, the image of a resurrection lily could be seen behind him, swaying back and forth ominously. The Tao Lakes region was full of powerful forces. The ground quaked in shocking fashion, and everyone watching from a distance was astonished. Just outside the 30,000-meter Tao Lake, the experts from the great sects and clans stared fixedly, holding their energy in check, waiting for the full eruption. And then it happened. A thunderous roar sounded as countless magical objects, corpses, Tao shadows, miscellaneous objects, and even beasts exploded out from the 30,000-meter main lake. In the blink of an eye, multicolored glows appeared, the shocking light of magical treasures. The collective gasp of the cultivators outside turned into a sound wave that rolled out. Given their reaction, there's little need to mention the reaction of the people in the inner region, who simply had to reach out to grab the treasures. Among the magical items was a long sword, 2 meters in length, around which circulated 9 1-meter-long short swords. The pressure it exuded was incredible. There was also a gigantic war drum, next to which stood an enormous puppet, the only thing even remotely capable of matching up to it. There was also an enormous halo. It was impossible to tell what it was made from, but it shone with golden light, its surface covered with countless inscriptions of magical symbols. From within, it could be sensed an incredible sealing power, radiating out in all directions. There was also a shocking corpse, not the corpse of a human but a black-colored dragon. To call it a dragon would be correct, though this particular dragon had wings. Not a flying rain dragon but fully 3,000 meters in length, with long horns. There was also a tree with a red trunk and branches, black leaves and blue flowers. Its 3 fruit were white. There were vast quantities of jade slips, one bag of holding after another, even shrunken palaces. Most astonishing of all, however, was a gigantic claw. The claw was pitch black, with 3 talons, over 300 meters in length, emanating an oppressive, murderous air. There was a vast variety of items, impossible to describe them all. On cursory examination, there were roughly 10,000 in total, and because the various auras were all mixed together, it was hard to tell which item was the most powerful. In any case, as they burst out from the lake water, the rippling aura that spread out was shocking to the extreme. The instant the Tao Lake erupted, the teenager from the solitary sword sect immediately teleported. Ripples of Tao seeking energy spread out as he headed directly for the lake. In addition to the teenager, the spirit-severing experts from the solitary sword sect also shot toward the lake. The golden-armored man from the Golden Frost sect, along with the other spirit-severing experts, transformed into the golden puppet, which immediately stepped into the lake. From the Violet Fate sect, Reverend Withered Tao moved with shocking speed, matching the teenager from the solitary sword sect. He vanished, reappearing above the Tao Lake. Of everyone in the Violet Fate sect, he was the only one to take action. As for the Li clan off in the distance, they instantly went mad. Their spirit-severing cultivators couldn't match up in speed, but had teleportation talismans. They activated them instantly and appeared in midair above the erupting Tao Lake. At long last, the old man from the Song clan, who up to now hadn't spoken a word nor revealed the tiniest bit of his aura, rose to his feet. The area around him transformed into what looked like a tempest as he, along with the 2 spirit-severing cultivators from the Song clan, headed toward the Tao Lake. The shocking eruption made it seem like it was raining. Even as all the others took action, the invisible coffin altar sect disciple Zhou Chen took a step forward. 9 bottle gourds spun around him, creating a tunnel leading directly to the erupting Tao Lake. On the mountain peak across from him, the burly Dai Yi lifted his head and roared, "Shrink, shrink, shrink." He called out 3 times, and with each call, the world seemed to shrink before him. By the 3rd call, the world looked like a zoomed-out image. He took a single step, crossing the void to appear in midair directly above the Tao Lake. At the same time, Lu Bai, walking through the teleportation traps in the outer region, stretched out his hand. The illusory resurrection lily behind him shrank down, and a 6-colored resurrection lily appeared in his palm. The instant the flower appeared, the area around him began to distort. Images appeared of everything that had ever existed or passed by the spot he stood in. He stood amid the glowing lights, staring at how everything had changed. Going back 3 breaths should suffice, he thought with a slight smile. Everything around him distorted again, and suddenly he saw the world as it existed 3 breaths ago. He stepped forward back into that exact moment, just before the Tao Lake was going to erupt. He took another step and was in midair above the Tao Lake. It was in that instant the lake erupted. His divine abilities and magical techniques were bizarre and astonishing. When the Tao Lake erupted, the light of magical items shone up into the heavens. The 6 spirit-severing patriarchs of the Blood Demon sect anxiously looked at Meng Hao. His eyes still closed, they stamped their feet and flew up, shooting directly toward the erupting Tao Lake. They weren't far from it to begin with, so it didn't take long to get close. As for Meng Hao, his eyes stayed closed, his mind filled with the withering flame demon magic true self Tao. He was still deep in contemplation. Though at first seemed impossible to comprehend, he was now reaching the limits of his understanding. He'd already determined that the withering flame demon magic true self Tao was actually split into three different Taoist magics, the first being withering flame, the second demon magic, the third true self Tao. But now he suddenly sensed the Taoist magic could actually split into 7 sections, each its own shocking Taoist magic. Withering flame demon magic true self Tao. The clone aspect was merely the divine ability represented by the character, self. The hundreds of thousands of cultivators outside the ancient Tao Lakes region were witnessing a rare and shocking spectacle. That long sword is 2 meters long, the 9 short swords each 1 meter long. Look at the brilliant glow, the lightning. It almost looks like tribulation lightning. Is it possible? Is it possible that sword is the legendary Deadwinter tribulation sword? Why does that war drum look almost the same as the primordial true spirit drum I read about in the ancient records? And that puppet next to it. I get the chills just looking at it. What is that tree? It looks so bizarre and has 3 fruits on it. Check out that beast claw, it looks incredible. Could it be a Tao-seeking treasure? That's a black dragon. It's a real-life dragon. It looks relatively small, but its body is definitely a treasure. A few dozen spirit-severing cultivators immediately convened above the 30,000-meter main lake as one object after another appeared amid the eruption of the lake water. Boom! There were simply too many magical items. Fierce fighting broke out in the blink of an eye. Screw off. Hey, I wanted that. This is mine. Anyone who dares to fight me over it will die. Explosions echoed out as the spirit-severing experts shot toward the treasures they favored. Shocking roars filled the air, and wild colors danced about. The greatest focus of attention was the teenager from the solitary sword sect, then the golden frost sect puppet, both exuding Tao-seeking auras. Strangest of all were the 3 people from the northern reaches. They flew about in 3 different areas, shattering the air wherever they went. Their sudden appearance was a source of alarm for the southern domain cultivators, but there was no time to uncover information about their origins and backgrounds. Everyone sped toward the treasures they wanted. The teenager from the solitary sword sect flew at top speed toward the 2-meter longsword. In the blink of an eye, his hand clasped the hilt. The enormous puppet from the Golden Frost sect exploded with a Tao-seeking aura as it headed toward the puppet next to the war drum, slamming aside several solitary sword sect spirit-severing cultivators in the process. The Song clan patriarch flew along at top speed, his body pulsing with an aura incompatible with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Everywhere he passed, shocking illusory blades flew about. His goal was one particular jade slip glowing with violet light. The 19th Li clan patriarch shot furiously toward the black dragon. The only member of the Violet Fate sect to make an appearance, Reverend Withered Tao, headed toward the red trunk tree with black leaves, blue flowers, and 3 white fruits. As for the barbaric hulking Dai from the northern reaches, an enormous wolf-tooth club appeared in his hands. A savage, wild aura exploded from him, reaching a pinnacle in the blink of an eye. His wolf-tooth club swept back and forth, shattering the surroundings as he charged toward his goal, the 300-meter-long black-colored claw. This claw belongs to Dai. Dao Child Zhou Chen from the Coffin Altar sect, also from the northern reaches, looked incredibly soft and feminine. The air around him didn't shatter, rather his surroundings warped and twisted, withering everything he passed by. His expression was cold, as he headed toward the enormous golden halo pulsing with sealing power. Last was one of the 4 young Starlords of South Heaven, the #1 figure under Tao seeking from the northern reaches, Lu Bai of the imperial bloodline sect, who could battle Tao seeking even while in the spirit-severing stage. Hovering in midair as the Tao Lake eruption surged around him, he almost seemed to exist in a different time and location, as if he could travel anywhere in space and time at will. He glanced around at the various objects until his gaze settled on the corpse of the enormous black dragon. A strange gleam began to shine in his eyes. He headed immediately toward the black dragon and toward the 19th Li clan patriarch, clearly vying for the same object. Everyone had their own targets and goals, some the same as others, some different, along with spirit-severing experts from other sects and clans heading toward their own favored objects. The 6 blood demon sect patriarchs scattered, each heading toward whatever caught their eye. The fighting seemed chaotic, but was actually the opposite. Only the most powerful experts fought over any visibly extraordinary item. Others weren't qualified to do so. Damn it, that's mine. Nobody owns the Dao Lakes. The treasures go to the lucky and you're not lucky. Screw off. Die. Explosions rattled out, joined in the blink of an eye by miserable shrieks. A Golden Frost sect cultivator was cut down by Reverend Wither Dao. A Li clan member excitedly closed in on the black dragon and was about to grab it when a soft sigh sounded. The sigh made his body tremble, then blood sprayed from his mouth. His fleshly body instantly turned into a pool of blood. His nascent divinity flew out without hesitation, but was crushed by the power of time. Meanwhile, Meng Hao still sat at the edge of the dried-up 3,000-meter Dao Lake bordering the 30,000-meter Dao Lake. His mind rang with thunderous roars as he gained further enlightenment regarding the withering flame demon magic true self Dao. He was finally able to thoroughly break it down. Withering flame demon magic true self Dao, his eyes opened. This magic has 3 levels and 7 parts. Each character represents a different secret art. Combined, they form something unbelievably powerful. The self character is the clone magic. It's too bad I didn't understand it before and pursued some incorrect theories. Were it not for that, I might already have gained true understanding and some boosts in power. What I currently understand deepest isn't the self-character and its clone magic, but the withering character. All living things wither, but a withered tree can grow anew in spring. The character Wither Chinese letter has a tree Chinese letter component on the left, representing life. The ancient Chinese letter component on the right represents death. The left is the past, the right the future. The character Wither is also similar to the 3rd level of the blood demon grand magic. Once I enter the spirit meridian stratum, I'll be able to consume spirit meridians, which is actually very similar to the Wither character. Withering someone's spirit meridians is akin to crippling their cultivation base and influencing time. It's like planting a seed, then reaping it immediately, ignoring the time that would normally pass in between. That is the true meaning of the spirit meridian stratum of the blood demon grand magic. All I need is some time in secluded meditation, perhaps half a month, and I should be able to step fully into the 3rd level of the blood demon grand magic. Meng Hao's eyes flickered with a brilliant glow. It was in this moment that shocking energy surged up from within him. Instantly, the eyes of all the cultivators above the Dao Lake turned toward him. He raised his head, a golden gleam in his eyes. Suddenly he performed a minor teleportation and reappeared in midair above the lake. Meng Hao. He was meditating before and based on his energy now. Could it be that he made a breakthrough? Damn it, if he gets involved, that's one more powerful foe in the mix. Please, please, please don't take a fancy to this magical item here. Go look at someone else's. Various thoughts and feelings like these bubbled up in the blink of an eye. Rumble. When Meng Hao appeared above the Dao Lake, his energy immediately drew special attention from 4 people. The first was the teenager from the solitary sword sect, whose pupils constricted. The other 3 were the chosen from the northern reaches. Dao Child Zhou Chen from the coffin altar sect frowned, staring seriously for a moment. A look of scorn appeared on Dai Yi's face, though his heart filled with vigilance. The person who seemed most interested in Meng Hao was none other than Lu Bai. He turned to look at Meng Hao, and a tremor ran through him. It's him, he thought. He sensed a feeling like destiny, instantly sure that the young man he was looking at was the person the esteemed Dawn Immortal had referred to, his destined adversary. Meng Hao's arrival shocked everyone. He glanced around and, to the shock of many, shot toward the Black Claw. His decision caused quite a few people to sigh in relief and continue fighting. Dai Yi's eyes flickered with killing intent as he too barreled toward the black-colored claw. The teenager from the solitary sword sect had just grabbed the 2-meter longsword. Energy exploded out, and he threw his head back and laughed loudly. Next to the black dragon, the 19th Li clan patriarch coughed up blood. He was no match for Lu Bai, who swept his sleeve and collected the black dragon. The Golden Frost sect was after the enormous war drum and puppet. A few spirit-severing experts fought them over it, but with their Dao-seeking aura, the Golden Frost sect steamrolled everyone in their way and seized it. As for the red trunk tree, no one dared fight Reverend Wither Dao over it. Everyone knew Grandmaster Pill Demon could refine all types of objects into medicinal pills. Since the tree didn't seem useful to others, Reverend Wither Dao easily collected it. The Song clan successfully acquired the violet-colored jade slip they'd been after. As for the golden halo, quite a few tried to fight Zhou Chen of the Coffin Altar sect over it, but all were sent into retreat, blood spraying from their mouths. 2 were even slain. In the end, Zhou Chen took it. The other miscellaneous objects were already divvied up among the spirit-severing cultivator from the various sects and clans. Dai Yi arrived near the black-colored claw, his wolf-tooth club sweeping about, spraying lake water. His left hand reached toward the claw. But just as his hand was about to latch onto it, Meng Hao pierced through the air with indescribable speed to appear directly beside it. Seeing that Meng Hao wanted to contend with him over the claw, Dai Yi roared, "Screw off," and smashed his wolf-tooth club down toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao's expression stayed the same as his fist struck out. The fist held no Dao-seeking aura, but as the number 1 figure under Dao-seeking, it still carried explosive power, smashing directly into the wolf-tooth club. A huge boom rattled out. A tremor ran through Meng Hao, and the wolf-tooth club was sent flying back. Dai Yi's face fell as he staggered back 7 or 8 measures. He looked up, a vicious expression on his face. "So you're not on par with that inhuman Lu Bai." Dai Yi's body flickered as he charged forward once more. Although Dai Yi and the other 2 from the northern reaches had actually arrived quite a bit earlier, even Lu Bai hadn't been able to see what was happening inside the Dao lakes. Only after the main lake erupted, distorting the surrounding air and letting them teleport closer, could they get a clear glimpse of what was going on, so Dai Yi was unaware of the shocking things Meng Hao had done. Looking more closely at Dai Yi, Meng Hao recognized the familiar aura of a Northern Reaches cultivator. "Northern Reaches?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm Dai Yi from the Desolate Clan in the Northern Reaches," Dai Yi roared, closing in on Meng Hao. "You must know Liu Zichuan." Rumbling echoed out, and everyone looked over to watch Meng Hao and Dai Yi fight over the black-colored claw. The eyes of the teenager from the solitary sword sect flashed as he gripped the rotating 2-meter longsword. In his mind, no one here could pose a threat to him except perhaps the handsome Lu Bai, with his mastery of time power. The Golden Frost sect puppet also looked over at Meng Hao, its eyes glittering. Reverend Wither Dao said nothing, as if uninterested in watching what was happening. The 19th Li clan patriarch was severely wounded and in full retreat. The members of the Song clan, having acquired the item they sought, seemed ready to leave. Dao Child Zhou Chen from the Coffin Altar sect seemed itching to fight. Looking over at Meng Hao, he suddenly frowned. "He's only at the peak of spirit severing," he thought. "He can't compare to Lu Bai." As for the imperial sect's Lu Bai, he too watched the fight between Meng Hao and Dai Yi, his expression tranquil. From a young age his talent had been prodigious, and no one from the northern reaches was a match for him. Even the Jai clan from the eastern land's Great Tang had wanted to take him in as an honorary disciple. Afterward, he'd been favored by the Dawn Immortal, who guided him on his path of cultivation. So he no longer cultivated normally, but pursued the Tao of the Resurrection Lily. What was more, the Dawn Immortal did not permit the Resurrection Lily to absorb him. Rather, she'd planted a seed within him that had no consciousness, allowing him to consume it and acquire the power of the Resurrection Lily, as if trying to sow good karma with him. Instead of saying he was a cultivator, it would be more accurate to say he was a Resurrection Lily. Because of that, even the Fang clan took him quite seriously, expressing interest in bringing him into the clan as a son-in-law. Because of all this, he held a unique status. There were even rumors he was some almighty expert who descended to planet South Heaven to be reincarnated and rebuild his cultivation base from the ground up. Considering his mastery of time power, he could take care of Dai Yi in only 3 moves. Too weak, he thought after a single glance, shaking his head at Meng Hao. But it was in that exact moment that Meng Hao spoke the words, "Northern Reaches." The sound evoked tempestuous thoughts in all the South Heaven cultivators. Even the teenager from the solitary sword sect turned to look at Dai Yi. Relations between the southern domain and the northern reaches were a sensitive subject. Although many years had passed since full-scale war raged between them, it wasn't a rare thing in the history of the lands of South Heaven. Every time there was a war, one side or the other would flow with rivers of blood. Northern reaches. No wonder the cultivation bases of those 3 seem so unfamiliar. It turns out they're from the northern reaches. The northern reaches are connected to the eastern lands, both on the other side of the Milky Way Sea. It takes a long time to cross the Milky Way Sea. Did they really come here just for the Tao Lakes? Even as the crowds from the southern domain reeled in shock, Meng Hao spoke the name Liu Zichuan. Although the name was unfamiliar to the southern domain cultivators, as soon as Dao Child Zhou Chen from the Coffin Altar sect heard it, his eyes flickered and he looked at Meng Hao. Lu Bai was slightly taken aback. He was from the imperial bloodline clan, Zhou Chen came from the Coffin Altar sect, and Dai Yi was from the Desolate clan. As for Liu Zichuan, whom Meng Hao had just mentioned, he too was from the imperial bloodline clan. The imperial bloodline clan was the #1 clan in the northern reaches, and Liu Zichuan was the imperial son of the imperial bloodline clan. His cultivation base was only at the first severing level, but in terms of position, he could be considered one of the top figures in the entire northern reaches. "You know Liu Zichuan?" asked Dai Yi, his pupils constricting. His Desolate clan was an auxiliary branch of the imperial bloodline clan, so despite his high cultivation base, whenever he heard the name Liu Zichuan, he had no choice but to lower his head and voice greetings to the young lord. "He owes me 9 million spirit stones," said Meng Hao with a cold snort. "How could I not know him?" He casually opened his bag of holding and pulled out a fistful of jade slips detailing the spirit stones owed to him by cultivators from the ancient demon immortal sect. "Su Xiaoyan owes me 8 million spirit stones. Tian Leifeng owes me 7,800,000 spirit stones. Zhou Jai owes me 9,500,000 spirit stones." 1. Fun fact: the name Zhou Jai is exactly the same as the Dao Child from the Black Civ sect back in the day. Dai Luo owes me 11 million spirit stones. And then there's someone named Han Peng who owes me the most, 15 million spirit stones. 2. Other fun fact: I know someone named Han Peng here in China, same Chinese characters as this. All of these people are from your northern reaches, right? Every sentence Meng Hao spoke made the faces of the 3 northern reaches cultivators flicker, especially at the names Zhou Jai, Dai Luo, and Han Peng. Even Lu Bai gaped in shock. Zhou Jai and Zhou Chen were from the same clan, and Dai Luo was Dai Yi's younger brother. Han Peng was a chosen from the imperial bloodline clan, ranked second only to Lu Bai. How could they owe you so many spirit stones?" bellowed Dai Yi, eyes wide. Unfortunately, the jade slips in Meng Hao's hands were imprinted with life essence aura. Due to the fluctuations emanating from them, the 3 northern reaches cultivators couldn't doubt their authenticity, nor the identities they belonged to. The surrounding members of the southern domain's various sects and clans were even more shocked than the 3 northern reaches cultivators, staring at Meng Hao with disbelief and astonishment. This was especially true of the cultivators of the Blood Demon sect and the Violet Fate sect, who stared with gaping mouths. What did the Blood Prince do in the past? How did he get so many people to owe him so much? This. I noticed that when he pulled out those jade slips just now, he only took a few, the ones belonging to northern reaches cultivators. Could it be that the rest include people from the rest of the lands of South Heaven? The Blood Prince must have done a lot of business in the past. Dai Yi's eyes were bloodshot, filled with humiliation. Throwing his head back and roaring, he hefted his wolf-tooth club and charged toward Meng Hao. "Nonsense, I'm gonna smash you to death, fool." Meng Hao's eyes glittered brightly. As the hulking man bore down on him, he raised his hand and pointed forward. "Blood Demon Grand Magic." Immediately, a blood-red vortex began spinning around the man. As it rotated, an enormous blood-colored hand appeared and grabbed onto Dai Yi. He struggled but couldn't free himself, and could do nothing but cry out in rage and confusion. It only took a moment for him to realize his fleshly body was rapidly withering, his chi and blood pulsing out of him and speeding toward Meng Hao. As for Meng Hao, his fleshly body rapidly grew stronger. Up to now, Meng Hao hadn't met anyone under Dao Seeking who could free themselves from the Blood Demon Grand Magic. The scene didn't faze the southern domain cultivators at all, but Zhou Chen of the Coffin Altar sect from the northern reaches was completely shocked, his face flickering, eyes wide as he stared at Meng Hao. Shocked, he began to pant. Any scorn he'd felt toward Meng Hao now long since vanished. As far as he could tell, a magical technique like this was on the same level as Lu Bai's time magic. Inhuman, just as inhuman as Lu Bai. Lu Bai of the imperial bloodline clan stared too, a strange light in his eyes, a slight smile on his face. Inwardly, the desire to do battle grew stronger. If that's how it is, he might be worthy of going up against me. Inside the Blood Demon Grand Magic, Dai Yi's fleshly body withered rapidly. Horror and astonishment filled his heart, completely terrified of Meng Hao. "Damn it, you're just as inhuman as Lu Bai," he roared. He clenched his teeth and slapped his bag of holding to produce a crystalline magical talisman. The talisman glittered brightly, a life-saving treasure given to him by his clan before leaving for the southern domain. He never imagined he'd have to use it on his first appearance. But facing this deadly crisis, he ignored any consternation and instantly smashed it between his fingers. The instant the talisman was smashed, a stream of Tao-seeking power descended. The intensity caused a tempest to spring up and slam toward the blood-colored vortex. Rumbling filled the air as the Tao-seeking power descended. The blood-colored vortex trembled and Dai Yi, taking advantage of the surge, burst out. But in that exact moment, Meng Hao gave a cold snort and waved his finger. "Wither!" Instantly, the withering flame demon magic true self Dao that Meng Hao had just come to understand sprang into action. The single character transformed into a natural law of heaven and earth, replacing what currently existed. A will of heaven and earth descended. In the blink of an eye, the air transformed, distortions appearing. Dai Yi let out a miserable shriek as his body once again began to wither. This time it wasn't limited to his fleshly body. His cultivation base withered, his life force withered, everything withered. Sensing death approaching, Dai Yi looked toward Lu Bai hovering off in the distance, eyes glittering. "Lu Bai, save me." Lu Bai lifted a hand and pointed out, "Reverse." As soon as he uttered the single character, the air distorted, and transformations of time appeared around Dai Yi. It almost seemed as if time were being forced to run in reverse, initiating an abstract struggle against the power of Meng Hao's withering character. One moment Dai Yi's body was almost completely withered, the next, completely restored. The pain of going back and forth between these states made Dai Yi intermittently issue blood-curdling screams. The entire process lasted 3 breaths. But to Dai Yi, those 3 breaths were like 3 lifetimes. In the end there was a boom, and Meng Hao backed up 4 measures. The withering character and the blood demon grand magic collapsed. Lu Bai fell back 3 measures, his face flickering. His secret art of time magic vanished too. Between them was Dai Yi, his body half-withered, now bony and thin, but not dead. He'd managed to scrape by with his life. Aghast, he shot toward Lu Bai, his terror of Meng Hao at a pinnacle. As far as the struggle between Meng Hao and Lu Bai, it was hard to say who'd won and who'd lost, but it seemed clear Lu Bai was a bit more powerful. And yet, even as Meng Hao backed up, he reached up with his left hand and slapped the 300-meter-long black-colored claw. Immediately, the treasure was sucked into his bag of holding. The 6 blood demon sect patriarchs appeared behind him, having finished gathering a large assortment of various items. As for the surrounding crowds from the southern domain, they were all panting. "He's gotten stronger again." Meng Hao only had a little flash of enlightenment, but his magical techniques actually advanced again. Damn it. He could already display Tao-seeking power, but now, if a Tao-seeking expert doesn't appear, who could possibly suppress him? Meng Hao. Dao Child Zhou Chen from the northern reaches Coffin Altar sect looked at Meng Hao with astonishment. He was well familiar with Lu Bai's reputation, not just famous in the northern reaches, but well known in the eastern lands too. If he weren't, how could he receive the honor of being deemed one of the 4 great young Starlords of South Heaven? Starlord was an honorific title in the lands of South Heaven, referring to the 4 strongest people in the spirit-severing stage. He was able to fight Lu Bai and even make him retreat 3 paces. This Meng Hao is too powerful. Lu Bai gazed at Meng Hao, the desire to do battle growing even stronger within his eyes. He raised his right hand, and the air in the area distorted. A pulse of Tao-seeking power began to descend. "I'm not in Tao-seeking," he announced. "I'm only at the 2nd severing level. However, I can enter the 3rd severing at any time. It's just that my Tao still requires refinement, so I haven't performed it yet. Today you will be the whetstone to sharpen my blade." By this time, his desire to fight was raging to the heavens. He took a step forward. But even as his foot descended, the lake beneath him suddenly began to rumble. The water began to shrink, as if another eruption were about to occur. A second eruption. Heavens, the 30,000-meter main lake is going to erupt a second time. What exactly does this mean? It's actually going to erupt a second time. The lands of the ancient Tao Lakes region sank down once again into a concave shape, almost as if inhaling. The sight instantly made the hundreds of thousands of cultivators outside gape, with wide eyes and reeling minds. A second eruption. When the 30-meter Dao lakes erupt a second time, there's a good chance treasured items will appear. It's the same with the 300-meter lakes. For the 3,000-meter lakes, there's no need to even mention it, but this is actually a second eruption of the 30,000-meter lake. It's going to spit out a precious treasure. It will definitely be a precious treasure. It will definitely exceed everything from before. A precious treasure. If the cultivators on the outside were aware of such things, one can only imagine the understanding of those above the lake itself. Even Lu Bai's mind trembled. Abandoning any thought of fighting Meng Hao, he looked down at the Dao Lake, heart quivering. The teenager from the solitary sword sect stared down at the Dao Lake with glittering eyes, breathing heavily. Don't tell me, that sword wasn't the good fortune. Is this the real good fortune? A strange gleam appeared in the eyes of the Golden Frost sect puppet. The Golden Frost sect cultivators inside had already acquired a treasure and planned to leave, but the new development made them collectively change their minds and resolve to make one last gamble. Reverend Withered Dao stared in astonishment, standing there mutely, while the Song clan cultivators unleashed their auras. As for the 19th Li clan patriarch, he wiped the blood from his mouth and glared about with wild eyes. He'd been defeated earlier, but this time he was willing to pay any price to steal something away. Dai Yi grumbled inwardly. He was currently weak and in no condition to fight. Next to him, Zhou Chen's eyes began to shine brightly. More rumbling could be heard. The second eruption would begin momentarily. The lake water began to boil, a huge blast seemingly imminent. Just as the lake was about to erupt, all of a sudden, Meng Hao flickered and shot toward the 19th Li clan patriarch. Damn it! The 19th Li clan patriarch's face fell, and he retreated at top speed. The other Li clan members behind him reacted the same way. Lunatic, madman, the second eruption is about to begin and you still think you have time to try to kill us. Meng Hao, what are you doing? You crossed the 30,000-meter line, so I'm going to kill you, responded Meng Hao coolly. He never had a good impression of the Li clan. Whether it was Li Dai that year in the Blood Immortal tournament, or the overbearing way the Li clan cultivators forced him into a corner outside the Rebirth Cave, they all stoked Meng Hao's killing intent. 1. Li Dai was Meng Hao's main competition in the Blood Immortal tournament. He made his major debut in Chapter 130. He killed him in Chapter 305, shortly after which the Li clan nascent soul cultivators joined forces with the Jai clan in Chapter 311 to try to kill Meng Hao. The qi and blood in his body was currently bursting with vigor. Having absorbed Dai Yi's fleshly body, he was ready to explode with power at any moment. He moved forward with incredible speed, and as he neared, waved a sleeve. Immediately, a gigantic hand magically appeared, emanating a Dao-seeking aura as it shot toward the Li clan members. Surrounding cultivators watched but did not interfere. The eruption was imminent, and they cared more about what treasures would appear. Boom! 5 people, including the 19th Li clan patriarch, all spat blood and tumbled backward. They were just about to employ teleportation talismans to leave, when Meng Hao pointed a finger toward them. The blood demon grand magic appeared. A blood-colored vortex spun around them. The 19th Li clan patriarch and the others could only watch in shock. No. Meng Hao, let us go, give us a chance. We'll leave immediately. Did you give me a chance at the Rebirth Cave that year? Responded Meng Hao coolly. The blood-colored vortex began to absorb them, and miserable screams rang out. The bodies of all 5, including the 19th Li clan patriarch, rapidly withered. Massive amounts of qi and blood power flowed toward Meng Hao. As that happened, Meng Hao's fleshly body grew even more powerful. A Dao-seeking aura exploded out, followed by blood-curdling screams as the Li clan cultivators' bodies turned into skeletons. As the skeletons shattered into dust, their nascent divinities flew out and tried to escape. Meng Hao waved his arm in response. Wither! A wind kicked up, and the 5 nascent divinities trembled, then began to wither and dry up. It took only a moment for the 5 Li clan cultivators to be dead in body and soul. It's too bad I haven't entered the 3rd level of the Blood Demon Grand Magic, otherwise I could use the Spirit Meridian Stratum. Even as Meng Hao sensed the ripples of strength inside his fleshly body, a massive roaring sound filled the air. Down below, the 30,000-meter Dao Lake was beginning to erupt. The second eruption. All eyes fixed on the lake below, and the boundless lake water rising into the air. Only one person wasn't looking at the lake. Meng Hao's eyes flickered over to Dao Child Zhou Chen of the Coffin Altar sect. After a quick glance, he headed directly toward the man. Who would have thought Meng Hao would actually attack Zhou Chen? Even Zhou Chen could scarcely believe it. After all, he had no enmity with Meng Hao. Moving with incredible speed, Meng Hao punched out. A Dao-seeking aura surged, and the air shattered as the fist sped toward Zhou Chen. Zhou Chen's energy surged. He performed an incantation and shoved his hand out in front of him. Boom! Blood sprayed from Zhou Chen's mouth and he tumbled backward. Mind spinning, he roared, "What are you doing?" "I want the halo you took earlier and put into your bag of holding," said Meng Hao, advancing toward him. Damn it, damn it. Zhou Chen was just about to retreat when the eruption of the Dao Lake grew more intense. A bright glow appeared within the water, as if treasured items were about to appear. By this point, nobody was paying attention to Meng Hao and Zhou Chen, though they remained on guard. Virtually all attention was on the Dao Lake below. Meng Hao punched again, and a shocking rumble sounded out. Zhou Chen's face paled as he tumbled back. He performed an incantation gesture that made his body distort and grow blurry, but he was still just as incapable of fighting back. More blood sprayed from his mouth. Too powerful, I'm simply not a match for him. Zhou Chen's face was ashen. The timing of Meng Hao's attack couldn't be worse for him. Right now, teleportation was impossible. It only worked after the eruption began. It's going to erupt any moment now, he thought, clenching his teeth. There's no way I can't hold on for just a few breaths. Meng Hao's expression was cold. He'd attacked the Li clan cultivators to absorb their qi and blood, planning to use it to snatch away treasures others had already collected. There was no enmity between him and Zhou Chen, but it was better to rob Northern Reaches cultivators than Southern Domain cultivators. Nothing to do with hatred, only territorial allegiance. Of course, this was a line of reasoning Zhou Chen wouldn't be able to understand. "Give me the halo or you die," said Meng Hao, shooting in pursuit. The rumbling of the Dao Lake grew even more intense. The waters were boiling, sunk so low it seemed the eruption would occur in the next breath. "Hold on," thought Zhou Chen, gritting his teeth tightly. "Just hold on a few more breaths." His face flickering, he retreated with all the speed he could muster. "You really are looking to die," Meng Hao said with a cold snort. He waved his hand and the ninth mountain appeared, the black-white pearls swirling around it. As it descended toward Zhou Chen, his face filled with intense astonishment. He wanted to struggle, but Meng Hao's fleshly body was already comparable to Dao-seeking. Meng Hao raised his right hand, seemingly fusing it with the ninth mountain. An indescribable force of destruction rumbled down. Crushing. An incredible sensation of deadly crisis filled Zhou Chen's heart, intense to the extreme. He was certain he couldn't evade, and that if the mountain struck him, he'd be dead in body and spirit. "Damn it!" A decisive person, he snarled and produced the glowing, golden halo from his bag of holding, tossing it out. The instant Meng Hao laid hands on it. The Dao Lake erupted. Endless lake water shot up into the air, within which could be seen, not vast quantities of treasures like the first time, but only one item. It was an illusory object shining with multitudinous colors, like a soul. It looked like a man, though its features were somewhat obscure. As soon as the soul shot out from the lake water, the sky grew dark and the land below began to quake. An unprecedented aura burst out, intense enough to suppress spirit severing and subdue Dao-seeking. This was immortal. An immortal aura surged skyward. And not that of a false immortal, but a true immortal. The area surrounding the soul instantly changed. Natural law spun and altered, as if this object's existence could substitute its own laws for what already existed. "The soul of a true immortal," said the teenager from the solitary sword sect, his voice hoarse, his expression one of extreme excitement. "True immortal's soul," said the Golden Frost sect puppet, panting. Reverend Witherdao, the Song clan patriarch, and everyone else were completely shocked. They'd all braced themselves mentally, knowing the second eruption would produce a precious treasure, but none had imagined it would actually be the soul of a true immortal. To someone at the peak of Dao-seeking, absorbing the soul of a true immortal would create an incredible opportunity to achieve true immortal ascension. It's actually a true immortal's soul. Not many people actually recognized what it was, especially among the hundreds of thousands of cultivators outside. But most of those above the 30,000-meter lake could tell what it was at a single glance. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. There were both true and false immortals. True immortals were people enlightened regarding a personal Tao who, after reaching the pinnacle, experienced immortal tribulation. Those who survived passed from Tao seeking to immortal ascension. False immortals faced no immortal tribulation. They carved their names onto the immortality bestowal dais of the ninth mountain and were bestowed with immortality. They had immortal chi, but could only be immortals within the ninth mountain. Such immortals could not step foot outside it. Furthermore, were the immortality bestowal dais to be destroyed, they would all perish. After all, they were all immortals of the Jai clan. Not good. The appearance of a true immortal soul will definitely attract the attention of the peak Tao-seeking cultivators from the various sects and clans of the southern domain. This aura is extremely difficult to seal. It won't get out of the southern domain, but there are definitely people here who have already sensed it. The Solitary Sword sect teenager, the Golden Frost sect puppet, Reverend Withered Tao, and some of the other cultivators all realized what this meant. Fight. I have to get my hands on it as quickly as possible. Even if I can't use it, I can give it as a gift and still be rewarded with incredible good fortune. I have to have it. Anyone who fights me for it is dead. The teenager from the Solitary Sword sect shot out, eyes bloodshot. Everyone else in the area also shot forward, eyes glowing. In the blink of an eye, everyone surged into motion, even Meng Hao. Fight for the soul of the true immortal. They would fight to gain control of the true immortal soul as soon as possible, before the peak Tao-seeking eccentrics arrived. This was immortal destiny, the opportunity to become a true immortal. When opportunities like this came along, nothing else mattered. The only important thing was the immortal destiny. Boom!